Good morning, everybody. Glad you're all here this morning for the joint meeting of the EDC and IDA. We're sorry about the inconvenience here, but the county was using the chambers for another event, so we moved out here. It's not the perfect setting, but it's what we've got, and that's what we'll deal with. As we start this morning, before we start, I'm going to ask Russ Melindy if he would to open our meeting in prayer.
Let's pray. Lord, we love you, and we thank you so much for being so great and so mighty and so powerful. We know that you're bigger than anything that we deal with, Lord, and we thank you for that. We thank you for your love for us and for your grace. And we thank you for your Son, our Savior, Jesus. Lord, I pray that as we go about the business of this county today, I pray that you would guide us and you would direct us. Lord, I pray that you would make us ever mindful and make it obvious to us that your guidance and your direction. Pray you would give us discernment as we make decisions and choices that affect us and affect our county and affect the citizens of this county. Lord, I pray that everything we do in this meeting and after this meeting and every day of our lives, that we do in a way that pleases you, makes you happy. Lord, we do lift up Lori today. He's under the weather. Not to belittle it at all, but I pray for him, for healing in him, and for your comfort for him and his family, that he gets back to new as soon as possible. This is our prayer today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Well, you're all still standing. Why don't we say a pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Jim, is there an update on what we do?
I can. I'll do that.
All right, we're going to start off this morning. We're going to have to pass this mic around. We got a couple hanging around here, so we'll share the love here. We'll start with the approval of the minutes of the EDC. I will tell you that Vanessa would normally be doing this part on the EDC. She is a recovering flu entity and a little under the weather, so she is here, but trying not to start hacking and coughing, and spreading that around to us. So we will start with the approval of the minutes of the EDC. I think everybody here had received those by electronic mail, and I will entertain a motion if there is one to be had. Doug's moved to approve, second by Russ. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
We can do the IDA separate. Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're going to move into the minutes of the IDA since we're now a joint body. All of you had a chance to review the minutes of the IDA from last meeting. Any motions for acceptance of those minutes? Russ moves.
Second.
Second by Vanessa. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same side. Motion carries. All right, I will now turn this over to Director Lambert.
Good morning. Let me preface the formal part of the discussion by giving you an update on Mr. Durrance. Lori was admitted to the hospital last Saturday evening with intense back pain. At some point during the week, he developed some type of infection. He has been transferred to Lakeland. His white blood count is down, or at least it was down yesterday, back to the high level of normal range. Apparently, they do have the infection under control, but they did determine that he has a ruptured disc in the middle part of his back, and you know he's had neck surgery recently. So I have spent some time over there with him, and I can tell you he's been out of it. And I think the prayers are very warranted here. So I'd like all of you to keep him in mind as we go forth. And if you get a chance to go up to Lakeland, I don't know, you know, hopefully in the next couple of days he will recognize you, but honestly, the last week, I don't know that he's recognized anyone that's been to see him. So if you get a chance, he is in Lakeland General now. So thank you. The item, broadband to Tech River. Greg Witt, are you here? If you could come up here, please, and kind of give us a report on what you have found out at this point in time on broadband.
I have reached out to Rapid Systems and Comcast, and have spoken to both via email and over the telephone, and seeking proposals from both of them on bringing the 1 gig of broadband to the building. I anticipate those proposals this week. I have tried to reach out to Comcast as well, and I'm not having...
CenturyLink?
CenturyLink I spoke to. CenturyLink I spoke to. It's Comcast, I believe, is one I'm not having any luck with. So I've made a couple phone calls to them, and I'll continue to try. So I do have 2 coming very, very soon.
And the process that you anticipate using once we get those bids in?
Evaluate them first to see if it's what we need and what we want to make sure, and then I'll present them over to review and the IDA to look at it.
Okay.
Yes.
Does anyone have any questions related to the broadband at Tech River? Okay.
Is it going to be wireless or wired?
We're soliciting bids for both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah. We want to be able to do a basis of comparison to see how it works. So.
Would it help to have 2 forms coming in there? I don't know what the reliability is. I know one of the things we've looked at is, you know, having 2 mediums, you know, to go across and have redundancy there. One of the reasons why we've kind of gone the Rapid Systems route as a backup or primary for both. Is there a need for both there? Or is that not really the initial stages?
Paul, I can address that. Actually, the first stage is to get service to the building, and it's really the simplest, easiest way to do that. Whether or not we have a fiber connection for redundancy remains to be seen. They have been, at least from my analysis early on, they're very expensive. But once we get all of the various numbers in front of us, then we can make a good decision. We do expect to bring broadband in eventually from 1 or 2 directions as either backup or primary. It would come from the Wauchula Water Tower, and we can bring up to 1 gig from the Wauchula Water Tower in on a separate microwave signal. And then we can also bring in another gig from this tower if we use wireless. But until we get the cost of fiber, it's just kind of hard to tell which is going to be the best way. But we do expect to have at least primary and secondary, and we may end up with a tertiary form of broadband to that area. So there is no active fiber in that area, which you well know. And the cost to bury it there is quite expensive and time consuming. So that obviously will come into play on what we finally decide to do here. So, Sean.
Just as a thought, have you spoken with rail lines? Because most of the rail lines have the easements for the fiber there. Sprint runs all of their...
We do have an ILA POP at ONA, and we have opened that POP, and we have that into the area. We're looking with this discussion basically as putting redundancy. Rather than just having one broadband signal, we're looking for a redundant signal. And in the particular area we're talking about, there is no fiber that has been buried there, and we just have a few logistics to work out before we really decide the best way to go with it.
What my thought was from a costing standpoint is that there are some very significant negotiating advantages that Wauchula as a whole has as a city with AT&T and Sprint running redundancy along the rail line specifically, spreading it out, using a secondary pop to be able to run it. Now, I would be willing to offer that we would provide the routers that are necessary for the backbone to do it. We've
Great.
got a glass backbone internally for our facility anyway. So we would easily be able to handle the entire industrial park, probably half the city of Wauchula, if there was additional fiber that came directly to it.
Greg, when we maybe talk with Dr. Okerman, we'll see how that works in.
And if you're seriously looking at microwave, I'd like to offer the assistance to help discuss options with that. I've done that in rural countries and in various places around the world. I know the providers, I may be able to get us some discounts on equipment and tooling to get that there as well.
Very good.
Yes.
So you're going to continue,
Yes.
and probably at the February meeting, we'll come back with a formal proposal.
Yes,
Okay, thank you. This time, Casey, do you want to make a presentation regarding USF?
Bill, I had a question about that situation.
I'm sorry, Frank, I apologize. You put your hand down. Do you want a microphone?
I shouldn't need one. I'm kind of curious. I was here when you decided to contract this building for the half-acre guy to manage the buildings and all this stuff. Is getting these bids out, that's not something the staff could do? Your staff?
No, absolutely not.
You sure?
I'm positive. Is that it?
That was all.
Okay.
Today, we've asked Mary Jane Stanley to come back to the board with USF to just talk about our further partnerships that we have proposed with them. Bill and I sat down with Mary Jane as well as Angela, who's the head of the Institute of Government at USF, to discuss moving forward our economy building strategy that we just completed and moving into phase 2. They're currently working on a proposal, and I'm going to let Mary Jane talk to you a little bit more about what we were thinking and the direction that we would go to. But also, we have also talked to USF, which that proposal is included in your packet, about doing a performance analysis with the monies that have been spent from the IDA for the past 5 years, to see what benefits that money has generated, as well as the jobs that have been created, so forth and so on, and then do a projection for 10 years out to see what those monies are projected to bring in the next 10 years. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary Jane and let her go into a little bit more detail about both of those separate proposals, and she's available for questions as well as that.
I'm gonna move these notebooks out of my way. I don't know who they belong to, so put them up here for right now. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Thank you so much for having us here today. I guess it's a good thing I came because we were able to use my laptop for your projection later on. So I guess I'm a Girl Scout. I'm always prepared in some way, I guess, or another. As most of you know, we just finished recently in November. We finished the Phase 1 report that we were contracted to do for Hardy County. And we completed that in November, and then got the final copies to Bill, and I know they've been disseminated to out to everyone else. What they've asked us to do now is to look at 2 other things. One of which is to look at what's called an economic development performance report, and for lack of another term, it's also a return on investment. Like, what are you getting back for the money that you're investing in the businesses that are moving here, and in the incentives that you're providing to these businesses. And basically, what we're going to be looking at is all the projects that you've done over the past 5 years, and looking at those where we're analyzing both the revenues that are generated and what's happened during construction while those projects were going on, looking at salaries and construction costs and those types of things that were paid, but then also looking at the operation of those businesses for the past 5 years, and then going on out for the next 10 years projecting. And that's looking at direct, indirect, and induced costs. And basically, your direct costs are what companies spend for salaries and items like that. The indirect costs that we look at are the employees that are working, that are actually producing products and providing supplies to these companies, and so that's another group that we look at. And then you look at induced jobs, and those are the jobs that are created by the money that is being spent, like for instance, because you need more people in a restaurant or a dry cleaner or those kinds of businesses that support your economy and keep your economy going. We're going to look at the tax revenues that these businesses are generating and other public revenues, utility franchise fees that they're paying into, I don't know if it's a school tax. There's all the different kinds of taxes that are being collected and how that's being, what the new businesses are paying back into your economy. We're also would take a look at just the general operating costs of the IDA, how many staff they have, how much it costs to just generally operate the IDA, so that we can put that into the formula so you know what your rate of return is. And it'll take us about 5 weeks to complete the study once we have all the data that staff is going to have to collect. So there is going to be some work involved with staff, talking to the companies that you've moved here and getting a better handle from them on the number of employees, the kinds of jobs, what those salaries pay, if they have visitors that come here, typically how many visitors, and that means visitors that come to a plant and operation to try to that are coming from out of town, which is generating more dollars into your economy. And so once we have a whole worksheet that's several pages long that we'll share with staff, and we'll work with staff. They need to get the information from the company and the companies, and then once we have all that information, then we'll generate a report that will come back and show you what your return on investment has been for your expenditures over the past 5 years, and it'll project going forward. And we're estimating the cost of that to be $17,470. And it would take about 5 weeks to complete once staff has gotten all the information from the companies. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions on that if you need me to.
Don's got.
Yeah, I did. You think you can do that in 5 weeks?
I can't, but there's we contract. There's a consulting firm called Impact Data Source, which does these. I've worked with for the past 5 years, and they do these kind of studies all over the United States, and particularly in the southern part of the United States, mostly the southeast and the southwest. They've done in excess of 2,500 of these. They've been doing it for 20 years, and so we would subcontract with them, and that's typically what we end up doing at the Institute of Government. We provide whatever services that we have the expertise for, and then we either go to faculty or outside consultants to do that for us. But they believe they can. They've done this so many times that they believe they can do this in 5 weeks once we have all the information.
It would actually take a little bit longer than 5 weeks when we put into the facts of the information that staff would have to gather.
Yeah, 5 weeks after we have all the information from staff. So you're probably looking at, probably 8 to 10 weeks from now before you would have something. So staff would probably need about a month to be able to do everything they need to do. Maybe even a little longer, maybe 4 to 6 weeks on staff.
So USF's not really doing this, a contractor's doing it?
No, we're doing it. We do parts of it, and then a contractor does the other part. Yes, sir.
What's the cutoff date as far as projects? Like which projects are going to be included and which ones will be excluded?
We were asked to go back and look at the past 5 years.
So like starting the end of December or last year? Or the completed projects in progress?
Well, we'd look at, if you've got any projects that are in progress right now that you're giving incentives to, we'd be able to put those into the formula also, be able to look at those.
And we've also asked to include just some specific projects that were done longer than 5 years ago. Like Pacer was here longer than 5 years ago, and Organics was here longer than 5 years ago, and we asked for this to be included in it as well.
So basically anything that's here operating now, whether it's 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, whatever, would be included in this study. Is that what
We're going back 5 years, but if there are specific businesses that we want included that the IDA had recruited, that we can individually add those in.
Are there businesses in the same time frame that we're excluding beyond the 5 years? In other words, 6 years ago, if we had a successful business, are we including that one but excluding one that wasn't
No.
successful? I
No.
want to make sure because somebody's
No.
going to ask that question later on.
No.
You know, the main focus is to understand the impact of incentives. And of course, when you look at direct cost, you're looking primarily at job creation and multiplier effects. But the IDA this past year paid like $93,000 in property taxes. I expect next year for it to go up to probably $150,000, maybe $200,000. When you start looking at return on investment to the county, that's $200,000 that it didn't have, and those are direct to IDA projects. There are other multipliers relative to the tax base that also have to come into play here to really figure out whether or not the incentives are producing something meaningful. So
I understand the need for the study. I think it's a good study. I think it's timely, especially in light of, some public input. I think it's very timely. I just want to make sure that we don't put a study forward that says we're picking and choosing which projects we're including because that's going to cause us problems in the future.
Not at all.
When I heard the 5 year, I was okay with that. When I heard 6 or 7 years, I was okay with that. But when I heard some of the projects that were older than 5 years, that's where I started to have a little concern. And I just want to make sure that we're not going to set ourselves up for somebody else to write another email in the middle of the night.
At some point,
Maybe I can help clarify that a little bit. Because what you really want, what you don't want to have happen is if you gave money to a project and then a year or two afterwards that project didn't happen, that not be included. And you can't. You still have to include, and what you're looking at is anyone that you've given incentives to, and if they've been successful or if they haven't, because that all needs to go into the formula because it still was money that you spent. So to get a true number, you have to look at all of that and be able to then show, the most important thing is you're investing a lot of money into these businesses. You're trying to give them that foot forward so that you can be successful and your community can be successful, but you need to at the same time be measuring what is that success rate.
And I'm sorry, I guess I didn't make myself clear. I didn't mean specifically picking individual businesses. I meant we would decide what we wanted included and go back to that time frame and include all of those in the time
Okay,
frame.
all right.
That was my question.
Okay.
If we're going to go back 7 years, we need to include everything from
Correct.
7 years.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Are we going to see a list of these projects before you start?
That's a staff decision.
I mean, we can.
We can do that. And we can go back for, if it's going to be 7 years or 8 years.
Because they have to provide us the list so they can provide you the same
Yeah, I
list.
mean, that's fine. I don't have
Just to
any,
make sure that,
that would be.
it may delay us because we're looking at 4 weeks.
There ought to be a vote more before we start.
absolutely.
And we don't, we'll get any more emails in the middle of the night.
We will try that, we will
we'll
make,
still get the
this
emails.
as transparent as we possibly can for you.
That's what we need to do.
We can do that.
So I prefer that. That's up to the board to decide that, but that's just my opinion.
Let me see that. So basically then the motion, when you begin to craft a motion, should be to approve the study for the $17,400 or $470 pending board approval of the scope of the project evaluation. Is that what you're saying?
That scope would include the projects by name,
Okay.
right?
I think what he's saying is to, really not the scope, to include a list of all the projects, approval of the list of all the projects that we were going to be evaluating for you.
We will then promulgate a list of projects for them to evaluate and
Yes.
bring it back to you.
Yes.
And for the purpose of being expeditious, I would like to get approval so that we can begin formalizing
that
this. Okay, that's fine.
You got a motion? Okay.
All right, we've got a motion, and I'm not going to try to restate it.
But, I mean, the motion would be, I'm trying to do this for minutes, clarity. The motion would be then to approve $17,470 and whatever the last number was,
That's it.
to USF for an economic development performance report, and the scope of the report will come back to the board after promulgation by staff in February. Okay, that's the motion. And that's for the recorder, so Christie gets it right in the minutes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, Russ seconded. Any discussion? Comment from, yes, sir?
It seems to me, sounds good. I've been thinking about this and even talking about it a lot. It sounds good, but I think you need to go back to when you started, when you got money and started getting, I don't remember what year it was, and get a complete average, and including, like she said, she's including the cost of you guys having the IDA here and expenses. And I guess that first one will be a draft. She'll be bringing back a draft before she brings the final.
Not impact data.
No, that's not what we're talking about. I think if I could, Bill, in the motion, I think what you're really saying is that you want to approve the contract, but then you also want to be able to bring the list of projects
Yes.
back to
The scope.
the list of projects back as opposed to the scope of the contract that we have. So you want to bring the list back so that everyone can be okay and make sure that you didn't somehow inadvertently leave off a company, or we forgot about a company or something, and bring that list to y'all to be able to say okay before anybody gets started.
Donald?
Okay, if our list is longer than $17,000 worth, are you gonna let us know, or we can amend this?
We're going to let you know that. Yes,
Okay.
sir, we will.
Because the list may be longer than what you thought.
That's fine.
And we will take a look at that.
And you may need another $3,000 or $4,000.
We will work with you on that.
Okay,
Absolutely.
it won't be less. Nothing less.
We all know that.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
I forgot the most important thing I wanted to say. How on earth is she going to be able to get documents like from Continuum, some of these things we can't get documents on? In fact, you got Casey can't even go over and get a document. So, how is she going to figure this stuff in when numbers ain't available?
The data that we use to do the analysis with is only as good as the information that that staff is able to obtain. And so we'd like to hope that the companies are going to be forthcoming and are going to tell you how many employees they have and what they're paid. We're not asking for any confidential information. We're not asking them for the profit loss statement. You're not doing that. What you're asking for is how many jobs have you created, a salary range of what those jobs are, as far as the taxes they pay, that type of stuff. That's all public record. That's easy enough to be able to define that. But they have to help us with the number of employees.
Well, that was exactly my question. The not public records. They're holding them.
But we're not asking them for anything that's classified confidential information, and we should be able to work with the labor data pool too to be able to pull some of that data based on their payroll.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Frank. We ready for a vote here? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Bill, did you want me to say anything about phase 2 or just? Because we're just.
We'll bring that up when we
Okay.
come back in February. And thank you, Mary Jane.
Thank you.
I look forward to doing this. I think it'll be very beneficial for all of us. The bionitrogen contract, at this time, I'm going to ask Stephen Southwell to come and make some type of presentation briefly on the contract. And then Ken, I think there's one tweak that has to occur this morning. Stephen, representing bionitrogen. I presume that's the best protocol here.
That's fine. Should be a mic up there, Stephen.
There is.
There's a switch on it. If you want to turn it on and off, it doesn't rattle. So.
I think it's on. Trusting you have the contract in front of you. This is essentially the same contract we were working from when the last time we met and discussed this in detail. With the framework is anyway, and it's a contract that has been used I think it was an EDA contract, grant award agreement, that we sort of used as a template to start with. The changes that were made since the last time we met were to incorporate the terms of the award that we discussed at the meeting, was that November? In November, where it would be a pro rata reimbursement based on their funding from their bond issuance. And so the terms of that are in paragraph 7, and I tried to be succinct in the verbiage as far as how we explained that. We even provided an example so we were clear as to how that pro rata share was being dispersed. The other component that is more unique to the project is the grant of an easement across the rail facilities that are being constructed, so there's an opportunity to extend those to property around the area, so that this 40-acre site isn't the only. They can't hold everybody hostage with the rail coming into their site, and they would be able to go out. So there's language in here that says they'll grant a non-exclusive easement for over the rail facilities to the adjacent property owners to the north, and that with conditions, of course, to contribution for maintenance and liability exposure and that type of thing. And we were going to, it's sort of implicit, of course, in the agreement, and there's a brief description of the project as far as what they're doing, but just in the discussion recently, we thought we'd put a more specific obligation of the business to basically to construct and operate a 120,000 ton capacity urea manufacturing facility that'll employ in excess of 50 full-time employees. Just a paragraph that says that they're obligated to do that in black and white, so that it's clear that that's what they're going to do and that's what they're supposed to do. So in the paragraph, the only change would make from the document that's in front of you is in paragraph 8 would add another bullet point there, a numbered subparagraph that just has that language that says specifically construct and operate. I mean, that's basically verbatim what it would say: construct and operate a 120,000 ton annual capacity urea manufacturing facility, which will employ in excess of 50 full-time employees. So other than that, that's the agreement.
Stephen, I believe in the November meeting, I had raised the issue of the various property owners. It's my understanding that the property has closed.
Yes, 31st they closed with Mr. Davis.
So we would only be dealing on the easement rights relative to the rail with bionitrogen.
Yes. I mean, I mean, we can't convey an easement over property because the ultimate alignment of the rail isn't settled. I mean, we don't have a legal description of where the rail is actually going to be located, so we can't sort of say that there will be, if this is the easement, that will be granted.
No, I understand.
But they're fully able to grant the easement at this point.
But for purposes of clarification, the only entity that this contract needs to be, it is between
Correct.
IDA and bionitrogen. There is not
Correct.
a third party.
There's no third party consent that needs to be obtained to be able to agree to grant the easement.
So this language will be added as subsection I in H. Is that correct?
For H.
H, yes. Mr. Evers, any comments?
I think he described it well. I don't have anything to add to what he presented.
Okay. So again, then the issue before the board would be to approve this agreement with the addition of the content discussed in H.
Would it be appropriate to have benchmarks along the way as this construction phase started, so that these in excess of 50 employees, we know that in X time or Y time or Z time, projected online or this type of thing, when this would occur? And I know that we can't pick a day and say on November 15th of 2015 there'll be 37 people employed. There's a lot of factors involved that's out of control. But would it be appropriate maybe to have some projected benchmarks along the way that we might be able to look at?
The employees, the bulk of the permanent employees will be basically on completion of the plant. And my understanding, and I've got folks here that can correct me if I'm wrong, but basically when the plant's ready to turn on, it needs 50 people. And it'll need 50 people on day 2 and day 2000. And so it's sort of the capacity of the plant isn't dependent on the, it's not like there's going to be a big ramp up period where they're going to hire 5 and then 10 next week and then 10 next week. Once they're ready to go, they need the people on board to be ready to go. So, I mean, I don't think that'll be a problem but it'll be conditioned on basically completion of, I mean, the employees won't be ready, I mean, they won't have the
So
employees hired
it's not going to be a
until they're done
phase-in
with
operation.
construction.
Once the plan is complete, it's complete in total.
Right.
And, they pull the trigger and it starts running.
The first component of the plant that we're, basically everything that we're discussing is, that is the phase of the plant, and anything additional with far as growth will be additional construction projects that'll need to incur. So any condition on the hiring of those people could be within 30 days of completion of the plant or something like that, because that's when it'll happen.
Is that date conditioned on the completion of the rail? Or the rail, could the plant start up without the rail?
Well, I mean, conceivably the plant could produce, I mean, if they could bring components in and out by truck, yeah, it could operate without rail. From a construction standpoint, that would be ideal, because they'd like to have that done and completed and when while they're mobilized with
Presumably,
construction.
if the rail comes in and the plant's completed, then the rail could be complete, and they could be looking for reimbursement from the IDA before the plant goes into commercial operation.
It will be before commercial operation because it's based on the draw of the grant. The grant, it's basically, as the grant, the 150 million gets drawn, an equal percentage of the 2 million goes into it. So your question, I think, is correct. If I read it right, as the plant is being built, the money to build the rail is also being drawn.
Right, that's correct. The rail, yes. That.
And when the plant's finished construction, the last payment from us is finished.
Right.
And at that point, the company's going to be recruiting and bringing people in to start the plant.
Right. I mean, that'll be a component. I mean,
So our involvement with this project could be complete before the plant goes into commercial services. I guess my question is.
yes. I mean,
So when
practically,
we're looking
yes.
at benchmarks, I think it's tough. I'm trying to figure out how we would do that.
Yeah, and it would be tough because they're not going to hire employees until the plant's completed. Yeah.
For record, Ryan Cornigan, CFO, to try and help address the question at hand. There will be a disbursement process with KBR, who's the overall engineer, procurement, and contractor for this plant, and they will have a disbursement schedule with the trustee for the bond offering. So the trustee will go through the process of disbursements along that contract, and you will be 2 out of 152 for that. The people, as far as hiring, we will be hiring those people before the plant turns on because we'll be needing to train them. So I'm not sure exactly when. That will be up to KBR as far as when they're hired. But if the plant starts in 2014, we will be hiring people this year in order to train and educate them on what they need to do. With that, there's an estimated probably 100 to 200 indirect jobs that will be created as far as contractors, et cetera, laying cement, et cetera, that are not in that 52. So what I can honestly say is I would expect more than 50 people to be on that job site before the end of this year, directly or indirectly. What we could do, if it's helpful, is on a regular basis, maybe quarterly or semi-annually, give you an update as far as where we are on the jobs, because that seems to be where your
That's a requirement in the agreement.
Yeah, there is a quarterly report that's required
Yeah.
as far as, and there's a hiring component of that.
Right.
Okay.
Let me interject this too. I mean, there is a very high probability that there will be complementary locations of other businesses adjacent to this facility. They're there. I mean, we know they're there. I don't know what your status is with them, but relative to confidentiality. But how do you count those? I mean, you need to understand that once this plant is built, there will be other folks who would like to locate adjacent to it. So we need to take that into consideration.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yes. I'm hearing things about railroads, about a plant being built, about how many people are going to be employed. And I remember that there's 15 tons per hour output of fertilizer. The one thing that's missing in my mind, where does and what is the input to this box that's going to be developed? How many contracts have been signed for providing that input? Is that at all available? How is it coming? Where is it coming from? And have any contracts been signed already before we get into this project at all? You can ask me anything if I wasn't clear.
No, I think you were clear. Part of that is under discussion with the confidentiality of other people.
What
So
would be confidential as far as?
I can't disclose, we're a publicly traded company, I can't disclose to you private conversations that we're having with people that are going to be sourcing it. I can fully tell you that those items will be press released as those contracts are signed. So we are in the process of negotiating with several different people to supply the raw material, the feedstock, such as tree trimmings, mulch, wood chips, other matters, trees. The material is here. We've done feasibility
Okay,
studies.
well, let me interrupt you. You must, before even getting involved with the process, you must have done some research what you're going to put in. Is it going to be what?
Yeah, a feasibility study is exactly that. The feasibility study analyzes the raw material input, the sourcing of it, so that we understand how many tons per hour and is it attainable within a 7,500 mile radius. That work has been done. There's a company called Baker & O'Brien that does this for fertilizer plants around the world. We've spent real money doing that. We spent over $1 million doing exactly what you're asking.
He implied to us last time that this is going to be the first project in the world. This has not been done anywhere. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Okay? It's on the record that this is the very first project in the whole world. And I'd like to know, get a little guarantee before even we spend a man-hour, because time is money, that this is feasible. Can you help me with that?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
There will be, we spent over $1 million doing a feasibility analysis and conceptual engineering on this project. What he said was correct. This has never been done before. There is a patent pending technology that attaches proven technology together to do what we're doing. That is what we're doing. So he is correct. All of the components, all the technology individually have been proven out for over 30 years.
By whom?
By whom? By KBR Greenhern. You can check them out as a publicly traded company. By Stamy Carbon, which is a urea technology manufacturer, and by PRM Energy.
We're not having a trial here, and I appreciate your questions, but you know, they're spending someone's spending $150 million on this project, and it's not us individually here in this room. So,
No, I understand.
you know, if whoever is approving this bond issue for $150 million had any doubt in their mind that it would not work, they're not going to do it.
And this isn't the first presentation.
Yeah, and we've heard this presentation before, so there's plenty of data that I think they could give to you.
Finished. I've seen a beautiful PowerPoint presentation and a beautiful web page and news releases based on those two items on their own web page and on their own PowerPoint presentation. And I haven't seen any substance, so I'm glad I brought up the question.
Thank you for your question.
I got one little one.
I find that hard to believe.
Well, I just want to make sure, because there's rumors going around that somebody worked for that company said they're going to be in this town, was going to be bringing garbage. I hope he was joking or whatever, or maybe it ain't even true, because I got it secondhand. But you still got the language in there keeping the garbage out in the contract.
I think this has been going around several times. What your definition of garbage may be different than our definition of garbage. I don't know what you call garbage, but somebody's burning orange trees on 62. You can see it coming in. I call that garbage. That's what we're using. Would you rather the trees be burned the way they are right now, or would you rather urea produced? It's a simple question. That's what we're doing, and that's what the county and the board has communicated to us, that they would like us to spend this money to create jobs to make urea.
Well, I would like to say we need a definition.
Thank you, Frank. We have discussed this over and over. No one's bringing toxic materials in here to burn in this plant. It's been discussed. No one is going to believe, whoever's circulating the rumors that you're privy to, is going to keep circulating them no matter what the truth is. They're going to still sail.
This person works for the company.
Well, good. So there we are. You've heard from the mouth. Again, this has been discussed and discussed and discussed. We're here today to deal with this as we speak.
Well, I'm here for
Not going to witch hunt.
I'm here for the public interest.
And we
land.
appreciate your public's,
I just wanna make
and we
sure
appreciate
we
it.
keep that.
Thank you for being a good steward of the public.
Yeah, one word. You introduced the word toxic when you said garbage. You didn't say toxic garbage. Municipal garbage that's going into our landfill, not necessarily toxic.
One thing I'd like to say is you mentioned landfill. Legally speaking, in the state of Florida, what we're consuming cannot be put in a landfill. It cannot. And that's been made very clear to the board.
One point of clarification too, what goes into bionitrogen is regulated by the conditions of their special exception. The Board of County Commissioners approved a special exception. I don't remember the precise language, but I believe it limits what goes into that plant to biomass. I don't think there's any latitude for garbage. So please, when you start asking questions,
read the data.
You need to understand which board you should be asking the questions to. Mike.
In the zoning meeting that it came before in September, and
Yeah.
also again when he went to Board of County Commissioners, municipal solid waste specifically was excluded in the minutes on the record.
Commissioner Johnson.
I want to concur with Bill that this more thing needs to stop. It was very clear in the meeting that, and it's going to be in the contract, that it eliminates household garbage and this and that, as I understood it, concurring with the commissioner here and with you, Bill, and
Yes.
the whole board. That issue was settled, it was right there, everybody heard it. So, with that being said, I just want to support the fact that, again, as said, and you said, that issue has been cleared up in my mind, and it's on record, it's in record, and, I appreciate everybody's concern, but I'm like, some of these rumors, we just got to let it be and just make a phone call and check with those of us that's already there, and we can check some of this stuff and maybe eliminate some of this in these meetings.
I do think that as we move forward, and I'm just thinking logically here, and I realize that this will probably be a midnight email, but the definition of how far biomass goes as we progress with this project will have to be addressed. I mean, and that will be an issue that comes through the Planning and Zoning Board to the BOCC, and at that level, it'll be debated.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean it to turn into that big.
Sure you did. Okay, back on track here. Thanks, Brian.
Did they have an updated timeline, project timeline?
Timeline currently?
Currently, no. From the last conversations that we've had, the timeline is still that we will be producing urea in 2014. We, as Stephen indicated, we'll be giving you regular updates. I mean, you'll see what's going on, and we'll keep you informed.
Okay.
Okay, what do we need now? A motion?
Motion to approve the contract with the change.
Yes.
I will abstain from this motion.
Okay.
I need to sign the paper, whatever you got.
Yes.
Christie.
All right, we need a motion to approve this grant award agreement.
I'll make a motion.
Authorize the chairman to sign. I don't know if that needs to be.
Yeah, and authorize the chairman to sign, yeah. Vanessa made the motion.
Second.
Mike seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign with one
Noting
abstention.
the abstention.
Noted.
We'll
Thank you.
get the form through. Brian, again, thank you for your efforts in doing this. We're very appreciative of all that's been going on with this project.
You're welcome. We look forward to moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to take a short break. Park, does anyone know where the restrooms are? Oh,
Right in the hall
okay.
here.
So we'll take a short break for the restrooms.
Bathrooms are there. If you go out any door, you're gonna have to be let back in or come into the front again.
There's no trees.
Anybody heading past this building is a shoot to kill order.
He studies everything. should have done all that already in the
Even if they give a bank, schools get more money to work with. We still have rail and 600 crazy Do we, is Travis here?
Yes.
So much for our time frame. What time is it?
10 o'clock.
Good to go. Yeah, that is interesting.
I'm afraid to say that
But they're not. Bill would That's what I told my gal. But there are others. In fact, Bill sends all one. Oh my God! They refuse to give up information. They refuse to come up
to me it sounded
I know Bill asked to get off one or something. I get it. We're and then didn't want to pay some of our subcontractors. No, it ain't even got started yet. I'm glad you're at the But you know what?
Back there.
Yeah, you know, we've talked to some, I know several other guys in IDAs around Central Florida, and I was lamenting some of our naysayers. They keep saying it's true, they want the truth, and they're not the truth, they're probably a liar. You know, he said, and the guy from Highlands County says, you don't even know. He said, we got 4 of them every meeting run down the road. And in the whole county, it's worse than that.
The reference. You know, I'm doing one. They hired me last week to be interim director of economic development. I'm just there 3 days a week and a USF 2 days a week.
Right.
I just started there last week. I haven't seen it yet.
God bless you, my child.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we take all this for nothing.
Yeah, oh, I know. But Bill has to, Bill and the staff, but you're right, there's no reason.
And a lot of the crap, they keep going at us now. It takes so much time and energy from staff that we can do some classes. We've got to go and refocus. We've got to make copies. We we got to give them credit. And it's relentless. It is relentless. They're going to be they think we're taking a draft, never get the kickbacks, they go on. Are they set up, Bill? Are they set up?
They're not quite.
Oh, okay.
That should fit everybody's.
Paul, how's it going? It's going? Chugging along. Staying kind of in the middle. Now remember, I'm going to tell you this from experience. If you veer off the road a little, don't jerk it back on because you'll start spinning. Ease it back on. I jerk it back on.
Yeah.
Yeah, they went around the country. We're going to discuss, we're going to do whatever. Whatever we What he wants to do is when he gets us out this
We're going to see how it works. It's going to take probably another couple months to really realize it. We'll see how it's going to
Next, how the road you doing?
guess it's keeping up with the water. I guess these are the water and the sewer, so I guess it's keeping up with that's what my assumption was. I don't know. And I guess the one on the bottom has I mean, I knew it was built, but I hadn't been in.
Yeah, I knew it was here, but I didn't know what was here. Well, yes. Come on, Willie, let's go. Let's go. You're the one. Well, they were getting set up for. I don't know if they were ready.
We're standing now.
All right, let's everybody start moving towards our seat, and we'll get this show back on the road.
I guess we'll just wait on you.
We'll get started here in just a moment. I'd like to remind everybody that as we proceed with our agenda here, if anybody has any specific questions, they need to address it to this board, not to some individual standing here. We're not going to get into a grilling type effect. And if this board wants to allow some discussion back and forth, which we will, but let's follow the correct protocol if you would. And I appreciate that. I think everybody involved would, instead of getting into a three-way conversation. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Director Lambert.
As per our contract, Travis Bond is here to give the monthly update on Continuum Labs in Tech River. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Travis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lambert. Welcome. January was, as you know, several holidays, but we continue to keep the lights burning. These are some things that we did on the software development scale. We did 101 bug and usability fixes with 37 features coded. These are things that you would know in a piece of software as features and functionalities. We completed 20 full designs, which also included 3 code pushes to production. What this means is that the analogy would be to pull something out of the oven and then it's ready for public consumption. And then lastly, we did 2 mobile submissions. The reasons that these are important numbers is that the people that we hired that are now what you call them as Tech River people, we call them the South office, is they were all involved in all of this. And so we have 2 mobile developers that are testing in Android now in terms of training, and they're part of a new submission that will be coming out on Friday as well. So some of the fun facts, I mean, we continue to participate in the Friday Night Lives. One of the things that we did is a lot of the people that were here pulled out Dashes, which is an application that LifeDash had created that is a way to simply share stories between people using various pieces of content and do it in a secure format. One of the things that we continue to get resumes in, and some of them are really good, and we've done some interviews. And so one of them that we're getting ready to do an offer letter here pretty quickly. And we continue to grow that office. As you know, we have moved into what was the old USF Polytechnic building there at 116 Main Street. It's been really neat to be there. Several people I know have come in from the community and said hi, and I appreciate that. It's a young crowd. They like being, techies, and they like to be recognized as techies, so I appreciate the support. One of the things that I do want to announce that is not on the slide for reason N, I am legitimately excited about it. I will not mention their name. We have a letter of intent, and once we agree on a mutual press release, We have partnered up to be the definitive front end for patient as well as the patient's family front end, as well as their demo software using CareSync to their medication adherence product. There are some technologies that are coming out there that recognize the fact that our country loses $100 billion with a B dollars in false admissions per year based upon the fact that a person was prescribed a medication and did not take it. Congestive heart failure, many of those familiar chronic diseases that you know of, the top 10 diseases out there make up 80 cents on every dollar of healthcare that's spent, and half of those people are not compliant. So just 1% increase in medication adherence to what the physician has prescribed you would reduce about $5 billion with the B in the national healthcare spend. The reason that this is important to our strategy, and the reason this is directly important to here in the county, as you know, is that we are trying to use as many staff as we can in the software package that we're building. So as we announced last month, we were going to continue to do some research on opening up a concierge feature, and that meant to have health coaches, nurses light, LITE, like LPNs and others that have been trained in medical terminology will assist people that use CareSync, the product, to go gather their medical charts and to keep their families informed, and as well as take care of people, and this is on a national level, to gather their healthcare data that's trapped currently in paper, to scan it, enter in the data specifically into CareSync so that they have meaningful, useful data. Now, we believe that that is a very significant target market, and we think that it's ideal for this county in that we have people that have experienced finer in some of the other local health facilities, and so there are ready applicants that have medical background. We also believe that because of the facilities and where we are in the software and what it can do already, that we will be launching concierge pilots in February, and we will be announcing all of this on a global level at HIMSS in New Orleans on March the 5th. So we're pretty excited about that. We'll also be announcing our partnership. They are a well-funded company, and we also met with them extensively in regards to, they make a sensor that basically goes into a prescription bottle that takes lots and lots of measurements, and so they will know if you've removed a pill or not. That will send a signal to our software, and we will then put that in CareSync and also remind you on your cell phone that you took your pill, or in the absence of taking it, we will remind you that you forgot to take it. And so when you look at medication compliance, there's a lot of people other than the patient that will pay for this. Pharma loses over $50 billion in unfilled prescriptions, of which then is just passed on to the insurer because now he has to pay for the hospitalization, for the restabilization. So we're looking at a significant market that can generate plenty of dollars that has revenue coming from many sources.
Question? Casey, do you want to give an update on the financials?
In your packet.
We would like to address this.
Okay.
Did you say you had something coming out Friday, a product coming out Friday? What is that?
You're supposed to address the board.
Yeah. Please don't address him.
Did he say he had a product coming out Friday?
We're trying to get through with this thing. We're going to save the questions, if you would, to the question time when we get through the end, if that's okay.
That's not okay.
Well, that's okay with me, and that's what we're going to do because I'm in charge.
You're sure you haven't read that law again?
I don't need to read the law. I know what the law is, and I'm in charge. I'm in charge.
Go ahead.
Keep on, Frank, and I'll have to get you out of here now. I'm in charge. Please, please don't have us go there. Please.
Casey?
In your packet, it was mailed to the board yesterday. You have the draw request as well as some backup information provided by Continuum Labs. It starts with your bridge draw that you gave Continuum of $355,000 back in October, and it goes to the most recent draw request for January. Travis and I, as well as Ken and Bill, have been trying to work out exactly what information that we need and going back and forth to make sure that we have the proper documentation to justify and substantiate all of the draw requests. It's been a learning curve for all of us, and from this month forward, what will happen is the draw request will be submitted by the last day of the month prior to the board meeting, and you will see those draw requests at the board meeting. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have in regards to those financials, and Travis will as well.
I got a bunch.
I do
Okay.
too.
Okay.
I looked through these pretty in detail just to try to get me up to speed with this, and I'm new to the IDA board, not new to the Continuum Labs project in itself, but new to the details and the granularity of it. Just wanted to try to get a little history or maybe some background on some of these. There's some stuff in here that I see that are primarily dealing with servers, ASAs. I'm familiar with a lot of this equipment. Is this equipment located here? Is it located in a data center? Is it located in Tampa? Where's all that stuff located that we're getting charged monthly for, or we're getting invoiced monthly for?
The Quest Data Center in Brandon, Florida.
Quest, okay. The other thing I had was there's a lot of dollars being spent, probably half of the draw is going directly to coding, design, and quality assurance of the product. I'm assuming the Dash's product.
Yes, sir.
It's going to
Kerosene. I would enjoy, or I would like to see, where, there's been a lot of hours put into that. And if there was a possibility of seeing that here as a board for the hours that are being spent in that work, so we can see a little bit more on the progress side of the kerosene and the development. I know you posed some milestones here, but to be able to see, if you've got a design that's been completed, obviously that's not intruding on, somebody's personal information, but could show us examples of what's being done. I think the board would be, at least I know I would enjoy seeing that. I know we'll probably get more involved in the statutes a little later in our responses to the Attorney General and what we've done there. And it's probably still to be kind of gone over as far as, whether we comply with 159 or what. But I feel like, Bill did bring up some good points in there, in that, we do have the availability to meet certain needs in the county for economic development if we see so fit. And if that's the case, we just need to make sure that if we are funding these things that may not be included in 159, it could be construed as things in another part of the statutes, that we're seeing those things as a board. We're seeing those things on a screen. We're seeing, things that we can hold in our hands, or at least we can see that there's some progress being made, especially with this much hours and stuff being involved in that. That's all I had.
Donald? Oh, sorry, Donald.
Yeah, you said this equipment is in Brandon, the Quest?
Yes, sir.
So that means they're getting the tax incentives from this thing instead of us in the county, right?
What's the data center?
I know it's a data center, but you have to pay in the tax, and I'm sure they charge taxes to the data center, right?
We pay for one rack.
Well, if those computers were here, wouldn't it be tangible taxes on them?
Yeah, but they can't be.
Okay, that's fine. I'm going to hit on the coding thing too, that he was talking about. Now, unless I'm wrong, these new employees that you've trained will now start doing the coding, some of them?
Yes.
Okay, so then that expense will not be in there. When will that start, you think? I mean, you're paying their salary now, so they'll be doing the salary. They'll be doing the coding for the salary they're getting now, so that'll eliminate this coding expense for this other company that's doing it for you, right?
The people that are specifically coding on kerosene right now are individuals with a healthcare background that are senior engineers. The ones that we are training now only have, less than they've only been out of orientation for a month. And so the senior engineers probably have anywhere between 12 and 20 years of coding experience. So the junior people will be doing things like bug fixing and so forth, but not first generation coding. They will not be creating new features for at least several more months.
Okay, well, another thing that I saw on here was this travel expense. Now, this travel expense is, what, about $6,000 a month? That's what it's running? I keep seeing
This
5,900
one for
and something
October
dollars.
was $2,838.
Okay, can I get a breakdown
Sure, that's one of the
of
things.
is it mileage, is it airfare, how many days a week?
That's one of the things that Travis and I have discussed, and because of their accounting system, it's been a little bit more difficult for him to just pull those numbers. But we have asked for a breakdown of all of the travel expenses, and I would expect that to be coming sometime soon.
Okay.
So, but that is one of the things that we've requested for additional
Okay.
information. Well, I would like to address just something. I mean, as of right now, the building is not complete for them to move into. So they're being forced right now to be in Polytech Place on Main Street, use some of their staff as well as office out of Tampa for additional training. Some of those expenses will definitely go down once the building is finished and they move into that building. But as of right now, there's nowhere for them to go, so they're having to make do with what they have right now.
Any other questions? Yes.
It's turned off. Turn it on. Turn it on.
Hello. Forgive me if it's redundant, I'm new as well, so I want to just apologize if it's already been discussed, but I see on these invoices that non-Hardy County-based salaries. What does that entail, and is that in line with the agreement?
That was in the agreement, that we did acknowledge that until the staff could be trained here completely, and we have recruited Continuum as a whole, even though some of their offices are in Tampa, that we, as part of the agreement, we did acknowledge that we would be paying some salaries outside of Hardy County. That's kind of one of the things that I was talking about as we move along, and and there's more hires here, as well as the staff here gets trained more and more. Those expenses will continue to go down.
Right.
But yes, that was in the contract, that would be an expense that we would expect. It's just these first couple of months while they're getting situated and training the staff here, they're having to use that staff more at this time. But it will go down. Did I answer that?
How long do you think that'll be before that'll stop?
It's hard to say. Those salaries right now are primarily used in sales and business development, which are outside the county. And so we can do a proper handoff on what was the sales pipeline. I don't know when that will happen, especially now with the new business that we're developing. We need to have people that really can talk about our products and talk about healthcare at a national level. So as people continue to get trained and can take over the position, then we will move then those dollars will increase.
Okay, did I hear you say that you don't anticipate changing that? Maybe I didn't hear that. Are you? Say again? Diana?
I didn't see.
Oh, I thought she had a question or something. No, I'm just curious, how much longer are we going to have to be paying salaries out of the county with this money?
I don't think that anybody can answer that
I don't have
right
an
now.
answer right now.
Okay,
It's a part- it's a
because
part-
training these people, you're training them in marketing and sales also, aren't you, down at the?
We are, but recognize that even any company would find different assets, if you will, in terms of people that have skill sets and relationships that you would utilize as a sales force, not necessarily all of a company who operates on a national or global level could anticipate every skill set and relationship that they need to be in one geographical location. And so when we look at these dollars and these salaries, these are people that have had relationships and are continuing to work with things like United Healthcare, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Florida. And there's no way to just sort of hand over that relationship immediately without thinking that we are running at risk and hurting those as potential sales. And so when we make sales into the enterprise level, it's not $100 or $100,000. It may very well be 5 or 10 million. And so from cost, or an investment rather, to the potential return, then we felt that these are still valuable dollars to continue with our revenue
goals.
What percentage of this money that you get each month you think goes to salaries outside? I really didn't catch that looking at this. So is there a percentage you think? Would it be like maybe 10% or 5% or something like that?
I haven't done that math. I don't know.
Is the USF lady still here? Okay, with all this money that's going out of the county for these salaries, how would you do that? How would you count that as far as this report you're going to make? Would that be counted as money that's spent and stays in Hardee County?
We really wouldn't be able, but you kind of put me on the spot here.
Yeah, I don't know that it's fair to ask her.
Okay, I don't want to ask unfair questions, but I'm just curious. You know, if we're paying quite a bit of money.
Can I answer that?
Sure.
I think we need to go back and maybe have a bit of a philosophical discussion on what we're trying to do here. If you remember when we started this initiative, the idea was to bring technology to Hardee County. To have an expectation that we could do it closed shop and do it without extraneous employment or hiring people from outside the county is ludicrous. There's no way we could ever make this work without involving people that know and understand the development of technology. It is a work in progress. That certainly no one likes the idea of having to pay folks from outside the county, but you know, every building we build, the entire building is produced somewhere else. No one ever raises that issue. All the concrete is produced somewhere else. The pipe, the wire, there's nothing even to a physical public project that is produced in Hardee County. In this instance, we're trying to produce some software that will create a sustainable business model. And we're also doing an education program in tandem with that. And the difference in our education program and an education program USF would do is that our objective is to not only give these people a chance to learn how to do something meaningful that they can make a living with, we're also trying to give them gainful employment at the end of the day. If we simply opened a school, a tech school, and trained them, it's a means to an end for us. They're going to get on a bus and leave. In this instance, we're trying to do something that is different, it's innovative, maybe it's speculative. I've said from day one, I can't tell you that, you know, what chances it has to make it, but if we weren't doing it this way, I don't know that we'd be fulfilling our obligation to create economic development. And you have to understand that aspect of what we're doing. This man has been vilified unfairly. He is doing everything he can to make this project work. And either we get behind his wagon and start pushing it, or we just cut the harness and let him go.
Well, I hope I'm not vilifying anybody. I'm just concerned about where the money is spent. In my opinion, it is Hardee County citizens' money, not private sector money. Because my opinion is that when this money is written by Mosaic to the VOCC, it goes to the clerk of the court, and that money right at that time becomes Hardee County citizens' money. It is no longer private sector money. Now, if you or anybody says it's private sector money, then what I would like to see is for the county commissioners to deem this money private sector money and not the citizens of Hardee County's money. So I am concerned about it. That's just my opinion. I'm just saying that the example that you just give is a one-time expense of metal, concrete, sand. This money going out of the county is every month. And it's going to continue for the unforeseeable future, according to Mr. Bond. So that's just my concern about it. Nobody else may have this concern, but I do.
Any other questions? Thank you, Donald.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes?
I would like to know, I think you guys give them the deal was they're gonna get $355,000 a month. I see two checks in the financials you got there, one on the 5th and one on the 11th. that almost comes to $600,000.
That's for 2 months.
And there was not a draw schedule of $355 a month. There was not a specified draw schedule. Christy can tell you why there was 2 checks for those expenses. It was not for, it was for 2 separate months. It just happened to be on a check schedule that they were printed in the same month.
Okay. Mike?
That was my question.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, it was not 2 payments. It was for 2 separate months that just happened to fall in the same month.
Yeah, I went back and
For
looked
checks.
at the minutes, and that's what happened. It was paid in 1 month, but for 2 months.
Well, the reason I asked the question, when it was, the other company before these guys got it, there was 1 month that they was like 385% over budget, that they got a check that much for. And so I was concerned with that, so.
We didn't specify a draw schedule with this contract. The draws, it's not specified that each month they're getting $355,000. It's based on the expenses that they incur for that month. So each check could be a different amount each month based on those expenses.
Any other questions? Yes, sir?
The question I asked earlier, what product's coming out Friday?
I didn't hear that.
We're doing another push to the Apple environment, Apple Store on Friday. All of our software that we have spoken about is live. It just continues to be iterated, just as any other software package that anywhere in this room has ever used. There's new releases and new versions. In a web and / mobile environment, there are multiple iterations. We currently develop 4 platforms. So we have multiple applications that exist on Android and on Apple and on the web. And in the web, they run in 9 different browsers. So we're constantly updating all of those various environments for our software to behave.
So what's Friday is the one from Apple?
There'll be a rebranding of dashes in the iOS. It has new colors, new features, ways that we took back feedback, and basically the content is bigger. The reason that dashes is important to this county is that dashes is the technology that will be under the journal feature of CareSync. So if you're going through rehabilitation, if you're going through physical therapy or a stroke or your baby's first steps or something, those videos, those pictures, those check-ins at the mall or Disney World or things that people like to do now can be shared within the context of this is part of the medical chart of the patient or the baby, but it now has a social flair. It's one of what I hope people will keep secret, our competitive advantages, because no one else has an interactive journal in any of their other medical software. I'm sure that somebody will fact check me on that tonight, but the fact is that none of our competitors have found it, or none of our researchers have found it, of which many of our researchers are here in Hardy. I'd like to just point out just one thing, and I hate being on the defense, but the point is that, ladies and gentlemen, we are building a software company that is software-based. That company, its technology is here. We've committed to put it here. And Mr. Lambert is right. I do not know of me or most of our staff has not had a single day off since June, and present company included. We are doing everything that we can. I'm sorry it is expensive. Software is expensive, but the biggest companies on the planet are software companies. And so with investments come returns, and come returns that are huge. If we're ever going to put hundreds of jobs here in healthcare, that technology has got to be rock solid, because if it's wrong, it kills people. It's nothing to take lightly. This is not like we're playing words with friends. You just kept makes an error and you close it out. You have some drug that's wrong that doesn't pick up allergy checking. You don't give that to somebody who's been doing the development for 3 days to figure out whether mom can be sure that the prescription that the doctor just wrote isn't going to adversely react to her kid and end up in the ER or worse. So what we're building and what we've done before is substantive software in healthcare. And so continue to please be patient. I do not mind for the gentleman that asked about the designs. I have no problem showing you designs. What I do have a problem with is that there are some people here that I feel very strongly are attempting to discourage businesses to come in here. They're doing all that they can, I think, to sabotage what the IDA is doing. That is just my personal, profound opinion of being in the business world for over 25 years and creating multiple companies. I have never seen more of a coordinated, hateful, spiteful attack. These are not legitimate questions of concern. This is a coordinated attack to discourage everyone involved in the process. I have millions of dollars into this of my own money. I will continue to fight for it. I believe it is right. We have 9 people who have trusted us with jobs, who work 5, 6 days a week. We have people from marketing. We're sending out emails at 2 in the morning last night. We are a culture of software addicts. We're really trying our best. I promise you, if you look at the figures, you look at the hours, we are doing stuff on the cheap. Last time I built a piece of software, it was over $7 million. It also brought in a lot more revenue than now. And so we're doing things very, very efficiently. It's our benefit to do things efficiently. Because companies like us who grow, who hit the growth curve, they go out in their next round of raise, it's 80, 50, $100 million. And then they take their product around the world. So healthcare is one of those things that is delivered in over 80% of the globe in human English. And English is a language. All physicians are trained using medical textbooks written in the United States. We have something that we can take globally. Just give us a chance to make it stick here. And the people that will also write the software, write the software, push it out to live environments, will also be working in the same buildings where people will be on the phone, helping moms find their immunization records, helping parents who are trying to do things on behalf of their kids, and sons and daughters who now have their parents in long-term care facilities and can't get a nurse to return a phone call. Those are the kinds of transparencies that we're trying to do. And with things like medication adherence and others, we bring people on the table, so we gladly write a check for $10 million if we could get their Lipitor refills up. We can do that on a combination of having smart medication bottles and an application that the person taking Lipitor can sign on and have a mobile device. That person's family who's now saying, Dad, why aren't you taking your Lipitor? This is for your high cholesterol. And then we have Pfizer who said, look, every time this person doesn't refill their medication, we miss another opportunity. We will pay you to reinforce that he needs to take that. Oh, by the way, Aetna's going to pay because when he doesn't take it, he gets clots and he ends up in the hospital, and it's a $100,000 rerouting of his heart and coronary supply system before they get him stabilized to come back out, which now he's taking Lipitor plus 2 mg. So it is a big, big industry that we're trying to tackle. So please, just be patient. Any legitimate, sincere questions, I promise me or my staff would be more than helpful, more than grateful to answer. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. Do we need action on this? This was just an update?
We need to approve. Next row.
I don't think it was intended that there would be a vote each month, Mr. Chairman. I think it was a commitment to show up and make a status report update to the board, so you're informed, and I don't believe a vote's required.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next.
Due to the length of time, I'm not going to give you a detailed director's report. We're basically covering the things I would report sequentially as we go through the meeting. I'm going to move on to the financial report for the EDC first. Sarah? I will tell you that Lori's wife just sent me a text, said that Lori is settled in Lakeland as of 9 p.m. last night. Stayed by himself all night and did good. He called her at 5 a.m. This morning to come up and see him. Hadn't seen the doctors yet. His mind is a little better. And they're in the old section of the hospital, the West Wing, 4th floor, room 469.
Okay. If you'll take a look at the EDC financials first, we'll go through those first. The first page you have, page 1, should be your balance sheet, and you will just notice at the top that as of December 31st, we had $36,045.17. And then I just want to go directly over to page 2, and that's your profit and loss. And as of December, we had collected $1,000 in rent for that month. Our expenses for that month were totally normal. There was not anything out of the ordinary for that month. And you can see that the expenses totaled $22,453.42. And if you would like to go into further detail behind pages 3 through the end, that is your payroll summary and general ledger. And there you will find the detailed breakout of every transaction that occurred for the month.
So if you have any questions on those, I'll be happy to answer them.
I think everybody had an opportunity to see all of these before you got here today, so you're not looking at them cold, or you should not be looking at them cold. If you have any questions about the detailed summary, now's the time to ask. It looks like everything is a normal monthly operation as
Yes,
we've
sir.
done in the past.
It was. There was, this month, we did not have anything that was out of the ordinary for E EDC.
Motion to approve.
All right, motion to approve. Who did you get? Who? Okay. Motion to approve and second. Financial statement is presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries.
Okay. And now, if you'll go over to your IDA financials, we'll look at those. And on page 1 of the balance sheet, I want to direct your attention down to liabilities and equities. You will see a figure of $91,907. Larson Allen went back and did all of our adjusting journal entries for the year. And so your first page, you might see some negative numbers in there, and that's what that is. Our financials were a bit skewed because those journal entries had not been done, and that's something that our accountants come in and do once a year. So they have since come in and made those journal entries, and so now all of our financials are reading correctly, if you will.
So these were the year-end adjusting entries, Mike? Yes. So these were.
And then, other than that, if you turn over to page 2, some of the notable expenses for the month that were a little bit above, ordinary procedure. We did have a pay app to Half Acre for $169,103.80 as a part of the spec buildings that are being done out in Commerce Park. And then you also can see that Continuum's draws for November and December are listed here as well, that Casey went over just a few minutes ago. And I just wanted to point those out again, that is on your financials as well. And other than that, there was not any other expenses that were out of the ordinary. The detail is then on the following pages. So if you have any questions on those, I'll be glad to answer them right now.
On the item there just below Continuum Labs, Lightning Bay, is that name going to be changed? Is that for the spec building for the new one?
Yes, but the Swift Mud permit had already been filed, and changing it, we will adjust that.
Yeah, it will be adjusted, and like Bill said, the Swift Mud had already been done, as well as the E911 addressing. So we will need to go back and change that, and once we do that, we'll change it in our system to make sure that the class is in there properly.
But we addressed it as a board last month when we made the budget updates, correct?
I think that's correct.
We don't need to do anything
Yes.
else as a board.
No.
It's just a matter of changing it in the QuickBooks system that needs to take place.
With no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion's made to accept the financial report as presented. Any second? Doug, seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. I turned it off.
Okay, now for the moment we've all been waiting for, we get to enter into the audit discussion. I'm not real sure the best way to begin. This can be.
Let me say one thing. I want to say one thing before we start this audit discussion. There were 10 findings here that we're making responses to. We will entertain questions from anybody in here when we get through with these 10 findings and this board gets through discussing them. We're not going to entertain questions line item by line item. We'll get through the end, so make a note for whatever questions you might have on whatever finding there is, and when we get through what we're going to talk about, then you'll have an opportunity to ask those questions.
there are, at least in the past year and a half, we have had financial audits which basically look at the financial records and check for the cash flow, making sure all the money is accounted for. This audit is a little different in that it is an operational audit. It does look at the aspects of financial management, but they also look at procedural management, everything about the way the IDA operates. In addition, while the Auditor General was here, I think you used Attorney General a while ago. There is a difference between the Auditor General and Attorney General.
Wrong AG.
The EDA was looked at, and the BOCC relative to. Yes.
Bill, could you kind of give us a refresher of how all this started, as far as the letter the BOCC received, and how all this got to the point it is today?
I think I'll let Mr. Evers do that. I can. I mean, I'll be glad to, or you want to do it.
Either or, doesn't matter to me.
I provided a synopsis, but I do think it's important. Maybe we'll just kind of go through that briefly. This IDA was created originally in 1984. The law changed probably relative to membership, and in 1996, the IDA resolution was updated by the BOCC, and the only thing I could find that it did was it increased the membership. There wasn't anything really significant between those two resolutions. And you have to also understand this. The IDA is created by general law in the state of Florida. This is an extremely important point. Boards of county commissioners are authorized to activate them and to regulate the appointment and removal of their members. We have found nothing beyond that, with the exception of the possibility of providing oversight relative to annual financial reports and audits. And we're not certain yet exactly how that tracks through the law. We don't object to it, at least I don't object to it. I think it's healthy and think it's appropriate. But the state of Florida last year decided that it would crack down on special districts. You have to understand that there are many, many different types of special districts in the state of Florida. Some that the Water Management District is a special district. Sun and Lakes over in Sebring is a special district. Joshua Water Management District, or Joshua, I don't think they're a water management district, Joshua Drainage, they are a special district. There are fire control districts. There's all types of special districts. I'm still not certain that industrial development authorities were exactly meant to be special districts. I'm fine that we registered as a special district, and that's also an important point. We became a special district because we chose to register as a special district after the clerk said to me, I think you need to be registered as a special district. We've still never found anything in the law that says that that was supposed to happen. And I'm not saying that from a defensive standpoint. If there's anything there, I haven't found it, and Mr. Evers can elaborate on that as we move down. But there was an initial inquiry to the BOCC in November of 2011 that had asked for, do you recall the content of that first letter? I think it's November 4th.
Probably have it somewhere.
Is it a joint legislative auditing committee or a special district letter? Regardless, let me give you some more background. When we registered as a special district, everything was great. And we determined that we would begin doing audits for the year ending 2011. That means that as of September 30th, 2011, when those books were closed out, we would have until June 30th of 2012 to do an audit. Well, on October 3rd, after the previous year's audit was due, I was notified that the first time you're audited, you really should have the first two previous years audited. So we were already in arrears or deficit or violation or whatever you want to call, because we had to go back and do the 2 previous years prior to the first year's audit. Again, there were no punitive, there's nothing in the law that says any of that was punitive. It's an oversight situation. So we did engage Clifton Larson Allen to go back to the 2 previous years, and then with the arrest of Mike Manley in the middle of this, I asked them to go back as far as they could go back and determine that there was no impropriety, that we could account for every dollar that had ever been run through the IDA, and that is exactly what was done with all of those audits. So, whether or not, I'm not sure how the deficit of not having completed those audits is relative, other than volatile politics, and we all know they exist. But as far as this board being guilty of anything, we were deficient in not knowing to register as a special district. And if there's clarity in the law for us to do that, I haven't.
Where I was going more with that is when we received our original letter to the Board of County Commissioners, how many special districts or cities or municipalities got the same type of letter?
Ooh, hundreds. Hundreds.
Okay. Do we know how many of them have under some kind of scrutiny by the Audit General? Or are we the only one, or what's the situation?
They told me it was their intention to look at every special district in the state of Florida before they were finished with this process. And I mean, this legislature's taken a keen interest in special districts, and it's probably wise. And I don't know that we'll have some comprehensive legislation. I kind of hope that there's some legislation that comes forth that clarifies industrial development authorities and their obligation to register as special districts, and then how that impacts their relationship with the Board of County Commissioners. And that, if I have an opportunity, I will certainly prompt various legislators to try to address that issue.
Well, to me, it'd just be interesting to see other situations like we are in today, if it is happening in other places, and where we can get together and decide if there is a better way to address this type of situation as it be.
The one thing I would say that would be against us is that if we were trying to prompt statutory changes simply to accommodate the situations that exist in Hardee County relative to the EDA and the IDA and the Mosaic Agreement in the IDA, we probably would never get the legislature to address a statute based on that. But honestly, I think there's adequate guidance in the statute for us to move forward. We all have to get to some level of agreement, whether it's philosophical or some level of understanding on how all of this has come about. So hopefully as we move through this process today, there will be some additional clarity. And Ken, do you want to elaborate any more?
I don't think so. Not on that. I'm ready to start with the findings.
Okay. Is that sufficient? Moving to finding number 1, I'm going to read it and then kind of give you a synopsis of my thoughts. In awarding a technology grant of $2,657,813, the IDA may not have complied with Chapter 159 of the Florida statutes, in that the purpose for which the grant was awarded do not appear to be consistent with the definition of project as defined in the Florida Industrial Development Act, and which requires the grantee to be financially responsible and fully capable of fulfilling its obligations under the grant. Also, the IDA did not include in the grant agreement a timeline for the grantee to relocate to Hardee County to ensure that the project provided economic gains to Hardee County. There's a reason this finding is the first finding. It does greatly impact what we're trying to do here. And I have tried to lay out what I believe to be the issues. I take great issue with the Auditor General. I will argue with them until somebody knocks me in the head. I believe they are patently wrong in their interpretation of 159. And I have tried to lay it out. I don't know if each of you have read what I have said here, but it boils down to this. Chapter 159 goes through a long, detailed description of projects. And these projects are basically all bricks and mortar projects. It gives us no latitude to do anything beyond building a public facility. Number one, that is contrary to the philosophy of the Mosaic Agreement and the intent of the Mosaic Agreement. And the Chapter 159 also says that we have the ability to enter into contracts and to foster economic development in the county. We have taken a position that we are fostering economic development by entering into a contract, which in this instance is the Mosaic Agreement, and we are trying to do projects such as LifeSync Continuum under that agreement. How do each of you feel? Ken?
Mr. Chairman, may I? I wanted, Bill, I know you've done it in your response that you circulated, but I put copies of the statutes out for the board members as well, and I wanted to go through it because each of the people seated on this board were seated by the Board of County Commissioners, and you all bring a little different taste and experience to the table from bankers and business people across the board. And I have confidence that each of you can read and understand what you read because it's not rocket science. I too disagree with the finding. I think it's a legal issue, and this is probably the only one I really intend to offer comment on because I think it's primarily a legal issue. The first comment I'll make before I really get into the statutes is, to me it was noteworthy, the first thing I read when I started reviewing this document was that it used discretionary terms like may not have complied. I personally have never seen an audit finding that uses discretionary terms like that. I liken it to something like a traffic officer pulling you over the side of the road, and you say, "Why did you pull me over, officer?" And he says, "You may have run the red light back there." And you say, "Well, did I or didn't I?" "I don't know. You may have." Well, what is that? You know, how are you supposed to take that? And my response to it is because they're not confident at all that they're correct. That's what people do. That's what lawyers do. They use lawful terms when they're not confident, completely confident in their position. And I intend, there are 3 statutes I want to go over with each of you. I put the copies out there, and I have a great deal of confidence that each of you can read and understand what you're reading. The first finding says that we may not have complied with Chapter 159 because the purposes in 159 do not appear to be consistent, etc., etc. Bill read it out loud to you. 159.46 is the first statute I intend to look at and go over with you guys. It's entitled Purposes, right out of the IDA section. And within the first 6 lines of that statute, it reads, Industrial Development Authorities, as authorized by sections 159.44 through 159.53, we're one of those, are created for the purpose of financing and refinancing projects for the public purposes described in and in the manner provided by the Florida Industrial Development Financing Act and by sections 159.44 through 159.53. And here's the catch. And for the purpose of fostering the economic development of a county. That last term, there are 2 purposes identified in Chapter 159 for IDAs, and that is you finance projects as we describe that process in this chapter, or you foster, or you're also one of your purposes is to foster the economic development of a county. It's right there in black and white. It's not in Hebrew or anything that none of us can read. Then we turn to 159.47. The next statute in line, powers of the authority. The authority is authorized and empowered, subsection 1E, to enter into contracts for any of the purposes enumerated in 159.44 through 53 and in the Florida Industrial Development Financing Act. So here you have a purpose of fostering economic development, a statutory empowerment to enter into agreements and contracts to foster economic development, followed by the third statute, which is 159.53, which is a statutory directive to construe liberally all the statutes in the chapter to basically accomplish economic development. It reads, sections 159.44 through 53, being necessary for the prosperity and welfare of the state and its inhabitants, shall be liberally construed to effect the purposes thereof. So, we have a statutory directive to not apply narrow definitions, narrow constructions, and when we say, use the term fostering economic development, that is about as broad a term as I could assign to anything. And I look at it, and in light of a liberal construction as directed by the statute, I have no question in my mind that this board, that the LifeSync agreement was one of the purposes identified in 159, and that basically the rest of the findings of finding number 1 are just misplaced, legally incorrect. I provided the statutes. You can read them on your own, but to me they're clear. I think that the Auditor General looking at this thing is looking at it through the eyes of financing and refinancing projects, as those terms are defined, and what they're accustomed to seeing, taking into account that in Hardy County we have income streams that are unique to any other counties anywhere. The EDA has a revenue stream that no other county has, and the IDA has a revenue stream that no other county has through the Mosaic Agreement. So when you take that into consideration and think that these auditors who go in and do the field work in 66 other counties, what they see is the financing and refinancing of projects and the issuance of industrial revenue bonds in accordance with those directives in 159. Conventional loan financing standards applied to applications, so that you have basically a banker's perspective looking at the applicant. How long have they been around? Do their finances hold up? Are they going to be able to repay it? It's a loan analysis. It's a bond issue analysis. And it simply, in my opinion, is misplaced in this, and you've seen the draft kind of responses that Mr. Lambert has circulated. It is our intent to take that position in the response formally and challenge that finding, unless the board directs us otherwise. I don't really, and I also am working with Mr. Lambert on the responses, and I believe that there are some of the responses where we just need to take it on the chin and say the IDA will be more diligent in the future, because that's an appropriate response. But I'm in favor of conceding where we need to, but challenging where we ought to, and I feel that first finding is misplaced.
Any questions on this first finding after you've heard this from the board? Yes, sir, Donald?
Well, on, I don't know what page it would be, but it's the second page of the, what would be page 2, I guess, of number 1. I'd just like to get this clarified if we can. It's right down there where it starts. The IDA has entered to a contract to foster desirable. It's about halfway down. Okay. Probably the last sentence. This money, while placed in the public stewardship of the IDA, is private sector contribution funding. Now, does this board consider the money that we give to people private sector money, or is it citizens' money?
This is private sector contribution fund.
I know it, but I've heard that it's not
the citizens' money, that it's private sector money. And these rules don't apply because it's not the citizens of Hardee County's money.
Can I address that?
Yeah, sure.
We have an economic development element in our comp plan. And it simply compels mining companies to take a good hard look at the post-mining scenario relative to the permitting process and come up with a plan that will demonstrate that we can have some type of economic recovery. When the economic development element of the comp plan was debated relative to the South Fort Meade extension agreement, Mosaic chose, at the end of the day, to make or to entrust their economic development stewardship to the Industrial Development Authority of Hardee County. They were quite specific that this money was not to be in the hands of elected officials, not because they distrust elected officials, but because they wanted to make sure with absolute certainty that the money moved into economic development. It was never allocated for the general public good. It wasn't allocated for roads. It wasn't allocated for schools or hospitals, because the precipitating cause for the money is economic development. The Industrial Development Authority was selected as the entity to receive that money because it was very important that the money go to a board in which the BOCC could not impose its will.
I agree with all that.
And if those circumstances changed, I can assure you that someone, Sierra Club, someone would file a lawsuit and say that if the basis for the permit was issued because the BOCC got money, it would have been peddling a permit. And I don't think any of us would want to have that happen in this community. So really the burden nobody's ever discussed here is that the obligation is on the IDA to prove to Mosaic that it can produce meaningful economic development recovery in Hardee County. And you know, this is going to be a pretty tough task. And we're never going to get there if we can't all get on the same page and have the same level of understanding of those points.
Well, I agree with all that, Bill. It's just if the money is not considered citizens' money, then they have no right even to be in here to listen to this conversation.
The money is Mosaic's money, and Mosaic is entrusting it to the IDA to provide economic development stewardship.
Once Mosaic gives the money to the clerk, it's not Mosaic's money anymore. If I give you a Christmas present,
the money never goes to the clerk. The money comes directly to the IDA.
Okay, it's got the IDA on it on the check.
Comes directly to the IDA.
It's not BOCC. It doesn't go to the court.
No.
Okay, then these people have no right to be in here. Then
Well,
we shouldn't have a public meeting, right?
Well, I'm just telling you that the disbursement is directly to the Industrial Development Authority of Hardee County.
Okay.
And I
was told that it went through the BOCC to the clerk and us.
I think there is ambition for some for it to go
Okay.
through the clerk.
Okay.
Let me offer.
I was wrong. Well, I'm trying to find out. I'll give up.
Don, let me take a stab at answering that. The money, I think, is actually, if I'm not mistaken, come by wire transfer.
But it goes to the IDA.
It goes to the IDA. The IDA has cut back, the agreement called for $500,000 to the BOCC. And that, then there is a check written from the IDA to the BOCC for the 500 is the way that's administratively handled. I'm going to try to restate what Mr. Lambert said in a different way. The public does have a right to be here. It's a sunshine board. It's a public meeting all of this, the economic development element of the comp plan, when it's adopted, is for the benefit and good of the public. It's the reason it is there is for the very purpose of attempting to accomplish economic development in this community, which will ultimately benefit everyone who lives here. That's so. When the money hits, governmental accounting standards trigger, as Mr. Carter will tell you, and you know, the financial requirements, all that stuff are there. It is, in my opinion, I'm going to say something a little different than what Bill just said. In my opinion, it is public money, but it's public money with strings tied to it by way of an agreement with Mosaic. And it comes in and it said, this is how these funds are to be used. That was part of the agreement. It's not out there for any other purpose. I've heard in one conversation with a citizen, the opinion stated that this money ought to all be turned over to the Board of County Commissioners so that property taxes and special assessments could be reduced or eliminated. Okay? That was said.
I've heard that.
That's not what the agreement was about. And that agreement, when it was negotiated with Mosaic, Bill nailed it on the intent, was exactly accomplish economic development with these funds. If you deposit it with the Board of County Commissioners, the whole thing, the political pressure would be insurmountable to do exactly what we've heard said, reduce property taxes and special assessments. It would, I think the idea, I may have been the one that said it, was I would not want to be a county commissioner with $42 million sitting in the bank over a 10-year period and have to take all the phone calls about how much property tax relief everybody wants and that sort of thing. So,
especially after the $42 million runs out.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then what do you, it's kind of like a haircut. It's hard to put back on, right? So it's hard to go back up with the tax rate after you've eliminated it, et cetera. So it's public money, in my opinion. It's public money. Citizens have a right to ask questions, what have you, but it is public money with private strings, for lack of a better word, because it is a private sector contribution, and by agreement, it was spelled out how that money was to be spent. And it's but the terms are very broad. Loan, grant, you know, various things that can be used for under the Mosaic agreement. So, you know, that's my 2 cents on the issue. It's a little bit different take on it than Bill's, but it's I think for the most part the same. At the end of the day, it is public money. It gets accounted for as public money in the financials, but it just has private sector strings tied to it.
I don't disagree with Ken's assessment. You know, it's kind of semantical. I will tell you
disagree
this.
with yours.
I will tell you this, that Mosaic was very assertive with this position. I'm not saying this to be negative to Mosaic. They have been a great partner for us, and we need to, you know, we really need to be focused on providing stewardship to make sure that we accomplish some economic diversity here. And, you know, I don't think anyone has an intention of not providing accountability and transparency with the money, but the philosophy of the money, and the philosophy of the money relative to economic development is certainly up for debate. But the money going into the public hands to be utilized for the common good is, from my perspective, not on the table. And if it ever comes on the table, if that issue is ever forced, then I think we would be in a position of breach with Mosaic, and they would have every right to take a different path. Is everyone clear on that point? Are there any other issues there? I would also say, to further back up some of Ken's argument, and it's not a direct argument, but when you get into the confidentiality statutes and you find that an industrial development authority is defined by state statute as an economic development agency that is protected under confidentiality statutes relative some of the points you raised to what Continuum is trying to do with software development, These are things that we all have to continue to be educated and develop a sophistication for. And we are an economic development agency as an industrial development authority. We do have rights afforded to us under 288.075 confidentiality statutes. And I've told y'all before, but I'm in a kind of a tough position because it is very difficult to determine the black and white between the public's right to know and the company's right to privacy. And if I breach, then I'm in a tough spot here. So I have chosen to err on the side of not breaching with the right to privacy and taking the heat on the public's right to know. And as I can get us to a point where more and more is revealed, I commit to each of you that we will continue to reveal. And I don't know how else to do this.
Well, does this confidentiality include on how the money is spent? I mean, I understand the software thing, that if you got a software, you have, you don't need everybody to know how you're developing the software. But when you're doing travel and expenses and all these things, that we don't have the right to see the canceled checks or how the money is spent, since we're giving them this free money every month?
I think we do. And I think we're working towards that goal.
Okay.
But it's a work in progress. I mean,
Okay.
it hasn't been done.
I know it's been hard to get in the past.
Well, the first contract was written differently than the continuum contract. And
Okay.
we now have a little more latitude to provide additional information. But I believe too, if we go too far, we will force this initiative into failure, because if there is too much transparency, there is no way they can ever put a competitive product.
Well, Bill, if I knew that they were putting in $150,000 a month and we was putting in $150,000 a month, I wouldn't be so adamant. But they're not doing that.
Well, Mr. Bond continues to tell you that he has put millions of his dollars into this product, and I do not believe he would say that if he couldn't prove it.
I have no response to that. I'm ready to move on.
Okay. How do you feel about, how do each of you feel at this point about finding number one?
I feel good, thanks to the counselor.
Yes. Yes, great.
So we should continue to take the stance that they have erred in their interpretation, or they're leaning to may not have complied is assertively wrong. Okay?
I think we need to be cautious about how we state that and stick
I
to
think
the
so
facts.
too. I don't want to be arrogant.
But I think that would be our position. We just need to stick to stating the facts, supporting that with restating what the counselors added to the conversation today, and leave it at that.
Yeah, I think Mr. Evers has the ability to phrase this in a way that's going to be appropriate.
That's subjective.
Without us giving him a whole lot of oversight.
Can I have a second? I would assure the board that the formal response will be properly worded with hat in hand. Respectfully submit that they are mistaken as to the law and their interpretation of the law, but not defensive or with an attitude or argumentative or editorial. The responses that you have seen from Mr. Lambert over the last week or so were really more informative to educate the board, remind the board about the history of how some of the stuff happened, but there will be responses to some of the audit findings that will read something to the effect that the IDA, maybe as brief as IDA staff will be more diligent in the future with respect to file documentation on the issues of this type, or something like that. Those are standardized kind of audit responses. I think that the bankers on the board are accustomed to seeing. You take your criticisms where you should and commit to the administrative modifications that are necessary to not have a finding like that in the future. So you can be criticized for making mistakes. I'll remind everyone, I've never seen, I know Rick, the two seated on either side of me, I think would agree with this, that I have never seen an audit come back with no findings. Because auditors do have to justify their existence. I mean, their measurement, the only standard they know is perfection. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is the purpose of an audit. It is to go in and tell you where you have done things incorrectly so that you correct that behavior, if you want to call it that, and in the future it doesn't happen. And they make generally very good recommendations. And the typical responses are management will take whatever corrective action is necessary to make certain that these type of errors are not duplicated in the future, period. And those are the kind of responses we'll see. Mr. Carter will be involved, I think, to some extent in the development of the responses as well. So, perfection is the standard by which they measure, and I've never seen an audit come back with no findings on anything anywhere. So it's hard. None of us are perfect. I'm the first to admit that. So it's a lot of these findings are file documentation issues, and there is a finding later on in number 9 that I believe they're mistaken on as a matter of fact. It's not a legal issue, but I think they're just mistaken on what was in the file and what wasn't in the file.
Can you relate to 2 and 3 as it relates to 1?
In an effort, Mr. Chairman, to kind of move us on, not to do your
please.
job, but moving through finding number 2, findings 2 and 3 kind of tie back. If we're correct on number 1, our position on the purpose of the agreement, finding number 2 really is a critique of the deliverables, measurable outcomes it talks about, et cetera. I believe that all ties back into the difficulty with which a project like Continuum is. This board has struggled, I can tell by the questions being asked today after the presentation, with, and the reason we asked for monthly updates was to come in here and let Mr. Bond make a presentation that gives you guys some feeling, and ladies, some feeling of where the project is, and if it's progressing to your satisfaction, at least you can have the opportunity to hear that on a monthly basis. I think more of it will become evident when the Preco building's done and they're actually able to physically locate more of their operation. But those findings, the third finding, the IDA did not demonstrate of record adequate monitoring. To me, that finding ties into Mr. Lambert's comments about the confidentiality protections afforded under 288 versus the public's right to view records under 119. And the position that Mr. Lambert finds himself in, as does other economic development directors across this state, is that if you have a request for confidentiality from a project, and you have a public records request for the same documents, and the project manager is telling you, we believe these items are confidential and are protected from public records release, and you have a public records request for the same document, someone else takes a different position, and it's not so well defined in the statute that there aren't, out of any document could be construed to be one or the other. The precarious position that Mr. Lambert finds himself in, the Florida statutory scheme makes it a misdemeanor for him to release something that's confidential and a misdemeanor for him not to produce a public record. So if there's a judgment call that has to be made, it's a heads I win, tails you lose sort of thing. Meaning you make the wrong judgment call. What Mr. Lambert elected to do, and this is one of the audit finding, you didn't have reports in the file that should have been there. Mr. Lambert chose to review the documents and not take them in his possession, so that he was not confronted with an issue of having to make a heads I win, tails you lose call about what might be a stack of papers this thick, and if he's violating the law one way or the other. If he releases something that they believe is confidential, and later some judge affirms that, he's guilty of a second-degree misdemeanor. Or if it goes the other way, he's withheld a public record that shouldn't be produced. So rather than having to go through a stack of documents like that, I think Mr. Lambert chose to review the documents and not take them into his possession so they didn't become a public record. You're only a public record if you possess it. So I believe that finding number 3 is absolutely probably best responded to with a, we'll adequately monitor grants in the future sort of response, but with some sort of subtle reference to the statutory conundrum that exists on confidentiality requests versus public records.
Well, how are we have certain policies that, in my opinion, that we have been left out of the mix on a lot of things, that our policies weren't followed. And that concerns me as much as giving all this money away, is that this board's been left out. It's just like, as far as I understand, it's in the contract that we should have made a vote before LifeSync was sold, that we're supposed to vote to approve that, and we do nothing about it. There's things like that that bother me more than anything, that I have been it's a matter of trust to me, that I trust the staff to do what's right, and I trust them. That's why I don't say a whole lot sometimes about the things that go on, but I feel that I can trust them to do what's right, and then I get let down.
Do you want to comment on that?
I can address it. The sale was negotiated in September. At the October meeting, we brought it before the board to acquiesce to, and it would not have gone through had the board not subsequently approved it. It was just a timing issue, and it certainly wasn't done to circumvent the policy of the board. And I mean, they pointed out as an audit finding, but it was just a timing issue. And I mean, I don't know, I can't tell. All I could tell Continuum and LifeSync is that this is going to be subject to board approval, and they can do whatever they want to. But at the end of the day, it wouldn't matter if the board had said no, we're not going to do that. Then we would have had a whole different debate, and I'm not sure where that would have taken us.
Well, I think, if we approved it, I don't remember it, but it seems like if it would have been brought up for debate, we'd have said, well, how are you going to pay us back this money that's in this contract?
Continuum assumed the contract. It wasn't.
We could have voted that down, couldn't we?
Well, I suppose you could at any point in time. I mean, you could do it now.
I'm not saying we would. I'm just trying to figure out. It seems like to me that sometimes things are trying to be slipped by us, and we don't know what's going on.
Well, I take offense to that. And we're not trying to do that.
Well, that's just what it appears to me. Okay, I'm ready to move on.
Good.
Mr. Ryan? I don't know. We did have a vote.
Yes.
I mean, we did vote on it. We voted
What was the vote?
to allow them to assume the obligation of LifeSync, and for that sale to happen. We did vote on that. I mean, I remember.
The audit finding is that they didn't get prior written. Well, it's kind of semantical in that they came to me and said, we are going to assume, Continuum is going to assume the proprietary assets, I can't remember the exact word, of Blue Water. And I said, well, great, but that's going to have to come before the board. And my conversational response to the Auditor General is that by virtue of the board's action in the minutes, that's written consent to consummate the agreement. Now, I couldn't give the written in September. I couldn't say, okay, it's fine for you to do this. I said it's got to come before the board. How else would I have done this?
I I don't know, but the agreement that we had with Life Sync says that if I, I don't know what it all says, but I can't remember it all, but they have to be financially responsible to pay us back if this thing failed, right?
Not if it fails. If it fails because they
Well,
did
if
not
they-
live
if
up
they
to their
sell it or
obligations in the
whatever.
contract.
Well, there's something about that paying us back. What does
If
that
they,
mean?
if they divest themselves of it,
Okay, if they sell it.
yes.
Okay, well, where is our money? If they sold it?
But we agreed to the sale and to allow continuing to move forward with the contract that was awarded.
Sarah's got
So
the
is that a
motion.
bad contract or what, Ken, or not? To do that?
It says, Donald, it says, my recollection is that it required prior written consent of the IDA before it was assigned.
And that didn't happen.
And that didn't happen, that I'm aware of. What
But the
happened
sign
was it was brought to the board in its next regular meeting and presented. I suppose there would have been a legal issue if the board voted and said, we don't want that, we don't approve that, Then we would have had to have gone back to that provision, back to Mr. Bond and said, you failed to comply with the prior written consent to assignment provision of the contract, but now we have a problem. But when the board, it's presented to the board and they vote to approve it, you're basically waiving, the board has basically waived the requirement that they have to give prior written approval by voting on it.
Sarah has the motion.
Okay, at the September board meeting, there was a vote, excuse me. You may have been present at the board, I can't recall if you were actually at the board meeting, but at that time, you actually were not a member of the IDA.
I wasn't a member of the board.
So
Right.
you may have been absent, I don't know. But the motion was, Lori Durrance made the motion to allow Bill Lambert and Ken Evers to prepare all legal documents necessary for Continuum Labs to assume all of LifeSync Technologies' responsibilities and note, Vanessa Hernandez seconded the motion.
One other point, this was our contract, we wrote it. We put the language in that said prior written approval. Had we just said without prior approval from the board, there would not have been an audit comment. But because we wrote the language that said prior written approval, it led to the audit comment. But to me, bringing it formally before the board and having it in the minutes is in essence written approval. I don't know, I don't know how else we could have done it.
To me, the issue that Donald is making is not the minutes versus it's a timing issue. He's saying it wasn't done prior to. I think he's saying it was brought to you after the fact. But as I understand this position, but is that right? I mean, I don't believe, and I may be wrong about the Auditor General finding in terms of recalling exactly what it said on that issue, but it was, the contract said prior written approval, and what you got was approval.
Yeah.
Just follow the contract.
Number 4, well, again, on 2 and 3, if we prevail on one, our response will be we certainly will continue to make efforts to write better contracts that are more appropriate. I mean, it's a work in progress, and we will do that, and that will be part of our response. Does anyone object to that relative to 2 and 3? I don't know if. And I still am in this position with 288.075. I will do everything I can to keep us out of lawsuits and keep myself out of jail.
I'll visit you wherever you are.
2 and 3. Is everyone okay with? Okay. Finding number 4 is the situation with Big Blue. We discussed it in the board meeting. I think everyone back when we were trying to consummate the contract. I don't think anyone was not aware of the situation with Big Blue. And I have attempted to state all of the facts that relate to that decision-making process. I don't know, basically what we did is we didn't document why the decision was made to support it being in the best interest.
I agree with I don't see where they had any right to come up with this.
You want to answer this one for us?
Well, no, because I've got some negative questions when I say this, because it goes back to the analysis. My question is, does Preco have this same agreement with Walmart and Winn-Dixie?
Paul, you want to answer that?
Well, let me go ahead before, I told Paul he shouldn't sit by me today. I told him that. I think that generators are 1.8 megawatt or 1.9 megawatt. If there's not enough, if the generator gets overloaded, it's going to kick off, right?
Yes.
Okay, who do we cut off? Who does Peace River cut off? Winn-Dixie, Walmart, or Tech River to get the generator back on?
We have a contractual agreement for 100.
Okay, so we're going to cut Walmart instead of Tech River.
Well,
that's just what I'm asking.
we have a contract.
Okay, that's.
We're relying on Preco to do what they contractually committed to do, and that was provide a certain amount of capacity.
Okay.
And we presume that will be there because we have confidence in the party that made that commitment.
Because when that generator runs, when it has to run for an outage, the only thing Walmart, Winn-Dixie, and the rest of them over there pay is what goes through that meter when that meter turns. So we're paying, and Tech River's going to pay that also, plus the $200,000. So I just want to make sure that we're not subsidizing Winn-Dixie, Walmart, Wendy's, Amscott, Murphy Oil, and all that with our $200,000. That we are going to get power to Tech River if that generator gets overloaded. That's all I'm asking.
Well, if that generator got overloaded, Donald, I would feel like Preco would be in breach of contract with us.
Okay, that's all I'm asking.
Because they made the commitment for the capacity. And I would hope that they have the expertise to not overcommit the capacity. That's what I would expect.
And I think that's what the state is saying here about we did not perform an analysis. And that's just, but as far as the generator, I think
I'm still back trying to understand how I would perform an analysis when one side of the equation, there's nothing to analyze relative to Preco's capability of providing backup electric power with Big Blue. I could come up with a 100 kW generator and try to prove up what the annual maintenance cost would be to maintain it, but there is no basis of comparison between that and the reliability of Preco. And there's also a statement in there that you probably need to pay attention to because it was debated by the IDA. And it says, especially when considering the closing on the property in absence of the agreement would not have occurred.
Well, without the power backup?
That was part of the deal.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not against that. I think it's a great idea. I just want to make sure that we're not going to be left out. That Tech River's not going to be left off the line if the generator gets overloaded.
They'll be in breach if they do.
Okay. Great.
So 4 is basically okay with everyone? Finding number 5 still goes back to the registration of the special districts. We are in compliance with all of that. I have letters from all of the state agencies telling us that we're in compliance. And I don't know what else we can do, but say, you know, we will make sure that we don't let this ever happen again.
Let me say one.
Beg forgiveness.
Yo, I just did it. Y'all remember that an audit encompasses a specific time frame. You got a start date and a stop date. At our exit interview with the 3 staff members from the Auditor General's office, we explained to them some of these things that they were going to show us findings that they had verbally kind of told us about had already been resolved. They understood that. But because the time frame for the audit was here to here, what we had complied with already was outside that time frame. So they couldn't address that. So they knew going in, some of these things had already been done. They knew that. And I'll also say one thing to you about some of this confidentiality and public's right to know. If I'm not mistaken, Bill, you correct me if I'm wrong, the staff from the Auditor General's office was offered to have documents presented directly to them to review. They wouldn't take them. They said, we're not competent enough to determine what's confidential and what's not. They wanted us to take them and then give them to them. They wouldn't take them. They were offered that. They wouldn't take them. I'll rest my case on that one.
Well, they also told me that if they had them, they would have the same public records request problems, and
they didn't know how to handle it.
And I will tell you that 288.075 is being debated in the statewide. It's hot button item, and we just happen to be caught in it. So I don't know if they'll make any movement on it this year. It's been going on for probably 3 years now, and I certainly hope that they can come up with some type of clarification. But again, this answer will be that yes, it happened and we have corrected it. And does anyone object to that? Any comments on that one? Okay.
I got more though. Not there, not on that.
All right. Finding number 6, the IDA has not taken full corrective actions in response to financial reporting and internal control findings reported by its independent auditor as material weaknesses and other deficiencies. I have to go to the detail. This one's kind of long. I think the first one of these.
Says say page 17.
I know, but the pagination changed a little bit with formatting.
Pagination?
It is.
Really?
Okay, finding number 6 is where it starts. And the first one is preparation of financial statements. And my first note is that my first note here, Mr. Samuels and others, are you there yet?
He's there. I'm there.
Okay, go to page 18, material weaknesses. Nope, is that?
17.
17. Oh, 18.
You're right.
Yeah, mine's 17.
Well, I have a different copy. Does it say material weaknesses, start at material weaknesses, preparation of financial statements?
Yes.
I can't defend anything that was or was not done prior to October, November of 2011. I can tell you after Mike Manley was arrested, taking care of all these issues kind of fell squarely in mine and Sarah's laps. And we have worked very diligently to correct any of the deficiencies that had occurred and to give you a fair, accurate GASB type of accounting system. And we do not have it all worked out yet. It's been complex, and some of those issues will be discussed shortly. But if everyone wants to point a finger, I mean, Mike's in jail, I point a finger at me. I don't know what else to say. I'll take the responsibility for what happened, and I will attempt to try to fix it.
Go fix it.
Yeah,
That's a good answer.
That's all I can do.
That's a good answer.
The inadequate separation of duties is a very standard audit comment in small organizations. We have continued to try to segregate duties. Christy did not keep a cash log because she really doesn't get any cash. And she had not really understood that cash included other types of transactions. And we fixed that. It was a very innocuous, meaningless situation, but it's fixed, and everything that comes in now is in a log. The check situation is still not resolved. If you recall, the financial audit asked that we consolidate our checking accounts, or various accounts, from 6 to 1. And as they got into this, they realized, well, you really have to, by agreement, you have to have a separate account for the Mosaic account. So we were pretty well told to create a Mosaic account in a money market account. The board authorized me to do an RFP for a money market account. Well, unfortunately, money market accounts are limited to 6 pre-printed checks a month. So the only option we have after 6 pre-printed checks are cashier's checks. We are trying to remedy that situation, but the only remedy I have at this point is to open yet a third account to transfer money from the money market account to, so that we can do more than 6 pre-printed checks. And I will get that resolved in some reasonable fashion once we get through the audit. But I mean, some of these situations are almost untenable. You're told to consolidate accounts down, then you get them consolidated down, and you find out that it creates another problem. It's not a big problem. It's just one that we will get audit comments on. So we will continue to address that. Moving to the next page, we had the blank check stock in a drawer with a lock, but it was not locked. It remains locked today. We took corrective action, and it's resolved. I frankly do not have time to run and make deposits myself. I will continue to allow Christy to make those deposits under my supervision, and I believe that's adequate. We will continue to segregate the duties, but it's a little hard for me to run around and make deposits. And I will do everything I can to make sure that those are done. We don't get that many. It's not like it's a whole bunch of transactions, but I can't tell you that I'm going to be available to make deposits when they have to be made. So, and we will accept the audit comment, and it may happen again. If somebody comes in and spot checks, I can't tell you that it won't happen again. On the formal documented policies, trying to get all the policies in place has been a bit of a moving target. We tried to adopt all of the policies and procedures we believe were necessary as a result of the financial audits. And then when these auditors came in, they suggested we adopt additional policies, and we are working to have a full, accurate policy manual. I can't tell you in the future with additional audits that there will not be new policies and procedures that come up through the growth and evolution of our society and we will have to adopt additional policies. So also, if you read some of these issues, they do go on to say that while they found them as, audit comments, that they had been resolved. And we will have to have what is the status on the bank transfer policy?
You talking to me?
No.
Because I don't know. I'm waiting on number 9.
We do have to adopt a transfer policy.
Yeah.
But it has not been formalized yet, and it really may come down to whether or not we create a third checking account. And also, if you recall, when we segregated the Mosaic money into 2 banks rather than 1, by agreement, by approval of the board, that created a 4th account. And the only reason we had the other 2 accounts is we were doing individual project management so we could track them better. I have a response on the material weaknesses and other internal control deficiencies. It had been my understanding that we had complied with everything that the independent auditors had asked us to comply with. And I went back and checked with them, and they concurred that they thought we had complied with everything they had asked us to comply with. But we are back with them again, trying to make sure that we produce every policy that we can. So I need to get back with one of the auditors and ask him to clarify for me exactly. I didn't really understand it. And the Property Owners Association involves the land in this park. It is here. We have not, as a board, formalized assessing people in this park the cost of maintaining this property, because we are still using it to market Hardy County. When this board does finally decide that it wants to formalize a property owners association and take the costs of operating the park and spread them out over the various tenants that we have here, then we will address the formalization of the property owners association. I don't have any other answer for that. I'll discuss the bank accounts. We will be bringing to you in the next couple of months some type of written agreement between the EDC and the IDA. I have no objection to whatever it says, other than having to go to jail.
I'll come visit you.
I know. Mr. Evers has been asked to produce an agreement, and it will be forthcoming. That will satisfy the audit and establish some contractual arrangement between the Economic Development Office managing the IDA affairs. We have chosen, at least I have chosen, and I think, I don't know whether Christians here have any say-so, but my preference is for us to not be government employees. I think that if we become government employees as employees of an industrial development authority, then our ability to interface properly with the private sector will be chilled by that. We also take the attitude that we want whatever we do to cash flow, we do not want to be a burden on the county relative to the cost of economic development. And I'm certain that we can demonstrate that we are producing positive cash flows relative to the county's initiative in economic development. And the contract will hopefully reflect this independence, and it'll be something that the IDA board will agree to. And it'll be whenever Ken gets around to it.
Thank you.
Okay. Finding number 9, I believe, is the next one. Ken, you want to address?
7. Removing Mike from the. Can you preach?
Oh yeah, finding number 7. I don't know how I missed that. Is I know what we did when we learned of his arrest, and we, upon audit of signature cards, one of the institutions, I don't remember which one, did not have 2 signatures required noted on the signature card. We didn't know that. We requested it, and they did acknowledge that they never had an incidence of not having 2 signatures on a checking account. I would have not ever known that situation occurred without an audit. And I guess, at least now we know, just because we will go to the institutions periodically and check with them and make sure that they do have dual signatures on the checks.
I think you get on the right.
Yeah, I skipped 7.
Yeah.
I had to back up and do number 7. Number 8 we just done. And number 9 is 287.055. Ken, you want to address that?
Number 9 is one of those issues where I think we have to take a couple on the chin and say that there are a couple of instances of technical non-compliance with the 287.055. I think one of the sub-issues in the finding was the IDA did not prepare a design criteria package for the construction of the Keyplex building and failed to hire an architect to represent the owner. And those are a couple of issues that we'll just say we'll make every effort that those sorts of issues are not duplicated in the future. There are explanations. I think Bill has included a lot of those in the supporting material for you. It's started out as a spec building but turned into a build to suit because the Keyplex fellows showed up right in the middle of the construction of what was started out as a regular spec building and wanted it built to certain specifications for his intended uses. And so an architect was hired, but I believe the architect was probably was someone he had been working with for his design. But anyway, it turned out being a design that met the suitor's needs as more like a build to suit project, and it was not ideally handled under the statute. We'll take the pipes on the chin where we have to on that. I will say that there are sub-issues. This is where one of the sub-issues appears in finding 9 that I will subtly but tactfully point out that I believe they're factually mistaken. That finding was that the file did not contain evidence that the payment and performance bonds had increased by the contract price as the contract was increased. There was a change order or 2 on the project. And when I went to the file and reviewed the file, the copies of the payment and performance bonds are both in the file, and they're 3 or 4 page documents with general conditions on them, and buried in the fine print in each of those documents is a provision that says this bond automatically increases with each change order. So it's tied. The bond protection that is intended to protect the IDA increases automatically pursuant to its own provisions each time the contract is amended. That's what it says in the bond. They were expecting to find in our file a separate document each time there was a change order showing the bond had been increased, but that is not the way it works. So we'll tactfully point that out on that finding. There were findings regarding substantial completion dates and liquidated damage clause that we'll take it on the chin on. And I can tell you what happened was the original contract price, I believe, was for $400 and some odd $1,000, and that was for basically to get the site work started. The acknowledgement that there would be a change order once the design came in, they knew what the guaranteed maximum price for the construction job would be. And the contract addressed substantial completion and liquidated damages, and says both of those issues would be defined when the contract was increased by change order. Once they knew what the design was, how long it would take to build, those issues would be addressed, and they were not. So when the change order came in, a couple months maybe after the original contract, no one went back and looked at the substantial completion date in the LDs. Fortunately, the project was built on time and on budget with a significant amount of private sector. The tenant has some real change in that building. So, I mean, it all turned out well, but there are findings within number 9 that they'll get the standardized. We'll make every effort to not allow anything like that to ever happen again.
And I would add to that, probably shouldn't, but I don't know how we do it any differently and still get the building built, which was the primary objective. And it's built, the tenant is there. I felt very secure in that, on the one hand, if they're going to take the position, this is a public facility. On the other hand, we had a private sector contribution of $300,000 into that building. And it's one of those hybrid situations that probably doesn't exist in usual and normal circumstances. Hopefully we can prepare more in advance, but economic development has to occur relative to the private sector's the way it wants to move. And I'm very proud of how we got the building built. I'm proud of the company that's there, and again, we'll make every effort to do it right, but if the same set of circumstances comes up again, I don't know how we can do it any differently in the way we did it.
Okay, this design fee thing, Ken, is that something we paid for but didn't get?
What specifically are you talking about?
Well, I'm on page 15 of the, not of this finding thing, but it's just above subcontractor bidding process. The sentence above that.
If your question is, did we pay design fees and not get a design?
Yes.
The answer is no.
Okay, what is that saying then?
What they're saying is that they asked the ID, their findings are premised, Donald, on the conclusion that basically a construction management contract they're treating as a design build, because 287.055 applies to design build contracts. And I don't really argue with them about that. I think that's probably a correct characterization. They're saying what your construction management contract is really a design build, because you're paying a construction manager to do the whole thing, right? From start to finish. That's what they do the process. I don't take issue with their characterization of it as a design build, but they're saying when we asked the staff, and remember this took place over a period of 8 months, staff indicated it was not a true, and they use the word true design build. It's not. It was a construction management contract. At risk, which is a little different beast. As the construction manager at risk did not contract for the design of the project. And I think at that time when those comments, I don't know whether it was you that said that when they asked or what, Bill, but they're saying IDA records indicated design fees were included. Because design fees were included and paid and there was a design actually performed, that made it a design build. They're disagreeing with Bill's initial reaction to their question.
Okay.
But I don't disagree with the position you're taking here, as far as the Auditor General.
Okay. Under subcontractor bidding process, was that first sentence followed by by a half acre? Begins on April the 4th.
restate them. I'm going to make certain I understand your question.
Well, what it says to me is that all these competitive bids and tabulation sheets and analysis and all should have been to come before this board to be approved before they started. Am I reading that wrong?
I don't think that they intended that language to mean they should have come before the board. I think what this is saying is, it started out with a RFPQ, request for proposed qualifications, for half acre to be hired to start with. They were selected among a number of individuals and ranked, and it was a competitive.
It was at risk, and they were,
What at risk means, Donald, the contract basically put all the risk on the construction manager. You complete the job for the amount of money you say you'll do it, or if you can't, it's your problem. We have a guaranteed maximum amount of money to put into the project. And I think this paragraph that you're looking at is really for background purposes. Really, I don't think they're really making a point. It's informative. They're saying the contract required that the construction manager develop a subcontractor bidding process, take competitive bids, tabulate the bids, and provide written recommendations for the award of subcontracts. And I don't believe in that context they meant to the IDA. I think they meant to staff, really. At that point you are contracting for a total, the board had agreed, Donald, to a total contract amount as a board. Now, whether or not this board wants every subcontract that was entered into, whether it was for shrubbery on the, whatever to come, I don't think it was ever the intent that those sorts of issues come back to this board for discussion and award.
Well, then why is this even in here by the Auditor General? Then, if none of this is, if it doesn't matter, then I wonder why they included it. Because a lot of this is troubling to me if it's something that our policies tell them they have to do, is to bring in all this information, and they didn't do it. But if you're saying they don't have to, then I'll leave this alone.
Maybe I misunderstood your question. What I think the first paragraph is doing is informing you a little history, and then the second paragraph is the criticism.
Well, let's get to that one then.
The second paragraph basically says that the subcontractor, the first paragraph says the contract provided that the subcontractor awards were supposed to come into IDA staff to review. The second paragraph says there weren't many documents in the file indicating that had happened.
Right, and that's what I'm asking you. Is that something that's required by them to do to us, or if they do a $1.7 million building, that they're not required to do all this? If they say, well, I'll do it for this, and I'm not going to give you any records. And that's what I'm trying to figure out. They don't have to give the records because it's a one-shot deal, or do they have to?
By contract, it was there that they should. The contract required it. They're saying they went to the file and they didn't find evidence that it had been done.
Right.
That's what the finding is.
when we came to the board to get approval to do this project, we got approval to bid construction management at risk, which means that whoever the recipient of that bid was basically in charge of building the building at the, in this particular instance, we were limited to the grant amount, which was $1,375,000 roughly. So my position was that we went through the bid process. We had 4 or 5 firms that bid to build the building for that amount of money. And I cannot understand how under construction management at risk, the IDA, where the contractor who got the bid had to build the building for X amount of dollars, should have us saying to him, well, no, you got to hire this subcontractor and this subcontractor and this subcontractor. And I still don't really understand these comments. I apologize. I have argued this with the auditors, and I hopefully, when this is said and done, we will all have clarity. We are not doing construction management at risk with the current building. We are doing construction management. And we are utilizing a Hillsborough County contract because if we tried to develop the sophistication to have a construction management contract, it would take us years to get through all of the necessary issues related to construction management. So again, what we're doing today is different than the way we built this other building. But I still feel like that when we awarded the contract to Half Acre, it was their job to build a building for that amount of money, and our intrusion underneath into the subcontractor situation, other than asking them to make every effort to hire local contractors, was as far as we could go. And we did that. The other thing that was important to me is that I prefer a construction management firm that does not self-perform. What I mean by that is I don't like someone that uses their own subcontractors or their own internal personnel. I mean, we're after pure construction management, and that's what we have here. It gives our local contractors a better shot at doing the subcontractor work if the general contractor is not self-performing. I guess is a better way to state it.
Okay, what I'm trying to find out is under these 2 or 3 pages here of stuff. I mean, it's just full of the state said they didn't do this, and this. So they don't have to. That's what I'm asking. So we just need to take this and then just put it aside and say they didn't really have to do this. The state's wrong. So we don't need to worry about this. Because what I'm ready to do is ask for a new RFP to get another contractor that's going to do what's right.
I don't think Donald,
well, I mean, that there's another building coming up.
I don't think, Donald, that this is one of those issues that I'm saying they're wrong about.
Okay.
I'm saying, I'm trying to just summarize their position. There was a guaranteed maximum price. What I think their position is that the contract, first paragraph on history tells you the contract said that we were supposed to see copies of all the subcontract awards as they come in. The purpose behind that, as I understand it, is to ensure that the IDA is getting the quality materials that you would expect to go into the project for what you're paying for it. Not that you necessarily are going to choose their subcontractors for them, right? It's their subcontractor. But in a guaranteed maximum price contract, if there were some sort of savings, that if there was a review of a subcontractor bid and it just jumped out at you as so high it was unreasonable, it just contradicted your gut feeling or something, and you were to question it, any savings, I guess, that you may have identified would accrue to the benefit of the IDA. Meaning, because it's a guaranteed maximum price contract, it could be accomplished for something less than the contract price. You follow me?
Yeah.
So if the contract price was 1.3 something million as a guaranteed maximum price, their position is that a thorough review of each subcontractor's bid may have disclosed one of 2 things: either sub-quality materials being incorporated into the project, or too much money being spent on a particular subcontract that might have resulted in overall savings. Maybe the building could have been completed for 1.2 instead of 1.3. That's as I understand the criticisms they're trying to spell out there.
Okay, the state is saying they did not follow our contract, or they did not follow state law.
They're talking about the contract.
The state is saying that Half Acre did not follow the IDA's contract.
We didn't follow it.
And that the IDA did not have in its file, staff didn't have in its file,
all this information,
all the evidence of all the subcontractor awards.
Okay, well,
and tabulation sheets that showed the numbers, but not the actual subcontractor invoices.
Well, why didn't we have all this information? Is it our fault, or is it the contractor's fault?
Well, it's our fault.
Okay.
but we were grabbing onto that at-risk part of it.
That and the fact that the tenant had 300,000 of his own dollars above and beyond what we were putting in it. I mean, it is a heinous crime. That's all I
Okay,
can tell
so
you.
the next building, so the next building that we're gonna build is gonna be different how? As far as the requirements of these.
This one is pure construction management. We are well into it. You're about to see that. Hopefully we'll be pouring a slab in the next 10 days or so.
But there's no requirements for this information here to be turned in.
It's totally different. This time we're doing pure construction management in a detailed, sophisticated Hillsborough County contract.
That's good.
It probably has the very same provisions, Donald. I don't recall, I looked at it months and months ago, Bill, but my guess is it's going to require the production of the subcontractor invoices, and the learning experience from all of this is that staff will require it and review it. And it'll be in the
Does
file.
Half Acre understand that? That they're supposed to turn these things in?
Yes, sir.
Greg, you want to address?
I'll give you that information for Project A.
Well, to me, this is embarrassing.
I've provided everything that anyone's ever asked me to provide.
Okay, I'm ready to move on. Mr. Chairman.
Why?
Well, I think you'll move on to that. Let's see.
Mr. Samuels, I didn't hear the last thing you said.
I said I'm ready to move on to the next one.
10? Yeah, contract. Broadband, infrastructure network.
Again, the criticism on the evaluation, I feel like is premature. We're in the process of proving up the construction of the broadband network. I don't know what else to say to them. Part of the problem is that they expected us to, because we had a 3-year construction period, I don't think they really realized that we got the physical construction done in like 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And we had actually completed construction of the middle mile of the system in the first year. Therefore, these subsequent reports were not necessary. We have been going through the last 2 or 3 years, beta testing, proving up the product, improving the product. The middle mile is done, and Rapid Systems is finishing the parts of their agreement, which include making 2,500 connections in Hardy County. And we're in all of that process. There'll be a full audit of it, and I don't know what else we can do here. The good thing about this one is the proof will really be in the pudding at the end of the day. It's easy to assess the product. And the other 2 findings are out of our purview.
Any other comments on any of these findings from the board here before I go to public comments?
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
Okay. You want the mic?
Yeah, I guess, but it's just,
I just had some things written down here that I'd like to see us do, but, the first one I got on here is I'd like to see us write some better contracts. And my next one was to put out an RFP for a construction manager, but I'll rescind that one. Okay, maybe hire an internal accountant. You think we need an internal accountant to help us keep up with all these bid things and all that? I'm sure that's a headache. I'm sure there's a lot of work to do that you may catch you well, I'll do it tomorrow, then you forget about it.
I think we've made adequate adjustments now.
Okay. And I'd like to make sure that the chamber's vetting process is adequate. Because I think when they did continuum labs, they left out part of the financial responsibility part of it that should have been in there. And I'd just like to remind the staff to follow this board's policies. And the last thing is that I'd like to see that all new projects coming up cease until the audit findings are resolved.
That'll be about 18 months.
Well, anything new from this day forward, you know, I'd like to, you know. Anyway, I don't want to go through this again, Bill. I'm sure you don't either. We need to know
I think we may very well go through this again as long as we are proactive in trying to move this ball forward. You're going to have these issues to deal with. There's no way to avoid it.
Well, I don't want to be in the cell next to you. Because ain't nobody going to come visit me.
I don't want you next to me. You'll be on the
Well, I just don't think we need to be just telling them to go to hell. That we need to, you know, try to do something to say we're going to try to comply until we know exactly what we're doing wrong. And I'm not saying we're doing everything wrong. I have to agree with what you say. But I just don't think we need to just keep, I mean, how long is the governor going to put up with this if we just keep throwing it in their face if we're not going to go by state law? It seems like our legislators, it seems like to me that Ben Albritton, Galvano, and Denise could tell us if we're violating state law. They're the one that passed the thing. It seems like they could tell us. And if they say we're not violating state law, then full board ahead. I'm ready to go with it.
We have a legislative, executive, and judicial branch, and generally interpretation of the law is left up to the judicial branch. And if we can't work out meaningful solutions, this board will have an opportunity to decide if it wants to go to court.
Well,
I suspect we will be able to resolve these issues. They are not that great.
Well, if these things keep coming out and coming out and coming out, we sit here going through this for public hearings and all this, it's just embarrassing, you know? Hey, you got something.
Remember, Donald, that the findings, every 10 of these findings, every one of them, and there are some we're going to say yes, we erred. We're going to try to do it right. But every one of these findings, none of them did they point their finger at us and said, "And you, sir, are going to jail." Every one of them said, "In the future, our recommendations are that you do this."
Well, you think it'll be at least 18 months before we get a thing back?
First place, they're, at least as they relate it to me, they are here, even if you look at their findings, they are advisory. They are saying, we recommend that you do it this way. It's not an edict. It's not necessarily a violation of law. We will contemplate those things. Some of their recommendations are good relative to normal and usual government practices. They may not be good for fulfilling the fostering and promotion of economic development in Hardee County. That is the subjective part of our decision making. And we have to be bright enough to go through this process and discern which is the best way to make these decisions as we move forward. We are doing things that, frankly, no one else has done before. And, we have to have the courage to do it, or we can just be happy to sit here and maintain the status quo.
Well, what concerns me is it says preliminary and tentative. Okay, are they just waiting on our answers before the hammer comes down?
Well, I don't know what hammer is going to come down.
Well, I don't either. I'm just,
these people have not been contentious. They've been very, our discussions have been very civil. There's been nothing that has been threatening whatsoever. They rubbed as much hair off of their head as mine and yours. Trying to figure out, because they've never audited. The auditors we have audit school boards. And when you try to apply the auditing of a school board to the auditing of an economic development organization, such as what we have in Hardee County, it is different. And they only look at things black and white. They do not consider the subjective parts of what we're trying to do. And I think we would be just as remiss if we didn't have the courage to try to keep moving this forward.
Well, if we do move forward, let's be careful. Let's try to follow as much of state law as we can without telling them, no, we're not going to do it. Let's try to, I don't
think we've said we're not going to do it. I think we have said that we need clarity. And that's a fair
But
question.
you're saying 18 months, and I'm saying this don't do any new ones till 18 months, and I think that's,
They
and I
told
think
me they
18
would
months
come
is too
back.
long. We shouldn't stop.
We will agree on a set of something, and they will come back over the next 18 months and review it.
Yeah.
And there'll be another round of findings.
I'm tired.
All right. Any comments from the public? Yes, sir. Frank?
Mr. Prescott asked about how we got into this. And my scenario is IDA was not following the statutes. And I mean, literally none of them. So we got the numbers audit on account of that. And the numbers audit, even though a lot of you guys think it was clean, led to this. And this one could very likely lead to something else. So, I don't understand. I've come in here in 2011, early 2012, with a lot of these very statutes this man's getting after you about. Mr. Everett said they're hard to read. But you wasn't following any of it. And I got in the...
I disagree, Frank.
I got your face and his face and told you you're the responsible guys.
I disagree with you, Frank.
So this is my opinion.
I understand, and I disagree with your opinion.
Okay. And Donald said something about whether it's public money or private money. It's simple. It's public money until you hand it to a private company, and then it's private to a certain extent. But if you're handing...
And that's your opinion.
Yeah. And then if you're handing them the money, especially something like Continuum, one thing you're doing, you're putting yourself into a terrible liability situation because you're supporting even the electric bills and utility bills for that company. And I don't know whether Ken will agree with me, but you are putting the county in one heck of a liability situation when you're controlling that much by putting that much money in. There's just tons and tons of stuff going on. Basically, you just need to get these statutes. Donald's talking about having this and that and whatever. You guys can read the statutes, and some of it's clear. There is some that is going back to another one. You got to follow things around, but some of it's pretty clear.
Well, I appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
I was just wondering, is this meeting being recorded?
Yes.
All right. Is everybody? I'm sorry. No.
Just on the response for number 10, my understanding from staff is that the auditor was actually provided with the insurance documentation. And so if that is true, then I just would like that to be part of the response.
Doug, I think the finding actually, it didn't say that there wasn't insurance. It said that their file didn't contain evidence of the insurance.
Correct.
So you can't, after the fact, correct the allegation, the finding, because when they looked, it wasn't there. So it's one of those things that you can correct, and it's substantively was not an issue because insurance was in place, but it's the failure to have it in the file that they're criticizing, not that it wasn't in fact there.
Understood, but my understanding is that it was in the file.
Well, I don't know.
He's just saying, as a part of the response, notate that as a part of the
If it was in the file, then I think that ought to be part of the response. I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer either.
Yeah.
Yes, there were, I think what the finding is addressing is that, yes, there were insurance certificates in the file. There were some that were not. So after the auditor came and researched the file, we did have to go back to Rapid Systems and ask them to provide us with insurance certificates for a couple of the poles. There were some that had been provided. We thought those were all of them. Apparently it was not. So there were some. It's not that we didn't have any insurance certificates. We just apparently didn't have
all of them. Any other comments? Yes, Don.
Jim, I would just like to say that sometimes when you hear the word audit, it just makes people cringe, and I understand people's concern for the Auditor General's findings. But I'm in a business where I'm audited twice a year and have been for many, many years. And I used to be the same way. I'd be a wreck when I thought it was time to audit. And finally sat down and actually talked to the auditors. And now I am at ease anytime I'm going to have an audit, because I know that it's their job to come in there, and they're actually helping us by pointing out some areas where we may not be quite as efficient as we need to be. And one auditor who did my audits for 15 years told me that if a good auditor comes in and he or she doesn't find anything, they're not doing their job. Because due to us all being humans and working with these files and filing things away and obtaining the information, there are going to be some areas where they're going to find something. And it'll happen every time. We needn't think that we can do everything on this list and have it triple checked that they're not still going to write us up for something next time. And I hope maybe that'll ease some of the people's minds that are concerned and afraid, because it's all to help us as a board. And I'm not concerned about any of this, because I listen to what Ken says, I study it myself, and I don't feel like we've done anything. If we'd done anything bad, we would already know it. It wouldn't have been written the way it was. May have is a very important phrase.
Well, I think we kind of, it's okay. I'm sorry, Mike.
Bill and Jim, I've talked to Bill about this a little bit. When we get into the confidentiality agreements and all that type, I just think in some cases it'd be advantageous if Bill would get one of us board members to be with him on some of those discussions, just from a public standpoint, that, I think everybody would feel a little bit more secure about that. Not saying anything bad about Bill or anything else, but just, from as a board, I think it'd be something that we need to look at in the future.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, I just, for clarification, earlier, there seemed to be a lot of confusion about the Mosaic agreement and the county, and I think it'd be, if Ken can help us out here, it's clear, it's not how Mosaic wants the money spent. That's not the issue. But the issue is what role did the Board of County Commissioners play in this agreement? Did they not, or is it not, the agreement had to wind up being between the board? Did they not have to approve this agreement with Mosaic?
Turn it off.
Yes, short answer. The county commission, the Mosaic agreement is an exhibit to the county commission resolution that is the mining permit for the South Fort Meade extension. So it is an agreement between Mosaic and the Board of County Commissioners, but it directed the payment to the IDA. That's the basics.
That's right. So the board, and going back to my interpretation of the people and the powers to be involved in this issue, there's where the BOCC is again in documentation form, also being held accountable to some degree of how that money is being spent. I'm talking about from state level, because as it wrote in there, where that original payment come to BOCC for is that money and it going back $500,000. So with the IDA being created and with the BOCC having to do the actual agreement between Mosaic and the Hardy County Board of County Commissioners is in fact the agreement.
The reason, Commissioner Johnson, that the Board of County Commissioners was the entity to enter into the agreement when the negotiations started with Mosaic, and Bill and I were both at the table, and I don't remember who all was there from Mosaic, but when the discussion started,
the legal question that came up was, what type of document, what type of agreement would best embody this agreement between Mosaic and the county in terms of satisfying that economic development element of the comp plan? And the consensus opinion amongst Mosaic Council and myself was a Chapter 163 development agreement, because those are traditionally recognized across the state as the type of agreement that developers enter into with counties and cities when they have projects seeking land use approvals. They'll traditionally provide for things like road paving and traffic lights and different things that may be conditions to the approval. We selected a 163 agreement and called it that because it has been recognized legally by the court system historically through Florida, and there's a fairly well-developed body of law that recognizes it as a valid contract, enforceable type agreement. So that was the driving force behind who the proper entity is to enter into the agreement, truthfully, is how that came about. And then it was the other things that have already been discussed here were talked about, and why the payments went to the IDA, not the BOCC, et cetera. But, and then it got tied into the resolution, because the hearings were being held simultaneously with the land use hearings on the mining permit. So it all got knocked out at the same time. The choice of the reason the BOCC was a party to the agreement was mainly probably mainly my concern that I had a legally recognized, enforceable document. And that is a document that is typically entered into with the local government having authority over the development.
But, yeah, but also I understand, I think the county easements and stuff involved in it, so therefore it had to come back to board. But what is your position then, given the documents that had been directed at the Hardy County Board of County Commissioners involving the IDA? Do you concur that we have some responsibility because of its creation? Everything there's a whole litany of things that they have pointed at. So what is your position when it comes to this very thing in the Hardy County Board of County Commissioners of responsibility?
I don't believe that the Board of County Commissioners has any oversight responsibility of the funds necessarily in terms of the Mosaic agreement.
No, not the oversight. I'm talking about the ultimate responsibility. I agree with that. The agreement is the agreement. It's not that the board needs to be voting on spending that money, but at the same token, these people have said that we are directly held accountable for the actions of the board, the way I've interpreted that, and that's what I've been told in Tallahassee. So I take that issue really seriously, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of it here for herself and you as our attorney. Where does the board stand on this particular issue when it comes to that point?
I don't know that I understand what you're saying, Commissioner. If it's not in relation to the Mosaic agreement, then you're talking about in respect to the Auditor General report.
Yeah,
where does the Board of County
No, I'm
Commissioners?
talking about the Mosaic agreement is real clear. In what I've read and whatever directive they've sent to us, they are looking at it from a public fund point of view, the way I understand it, and the way it reads. And they are saying to the Board of Commissioners here in Hardy County, we're ultimately will be also held accountable. And that's where what I'm looking at is, for example, hypothetically say there is something wrong and they come back with some, bad thing. Are they coming back at the Hardy County Board of County Commissioners in your opinion?
I believe they are not. I believe that the role of the Board of County Commissioners with respect to this board is the appointment and removal of members. 159 is clear about that, and that there is an argument, at least, that under Chapter 189, a Board of County Commissioners has the authority to conduct an overview type process over special districts it has created. And I think the fact that the IDA was not created by the Board of County Commissioners is why Mr. Lambert spent time saying that was an important point, that it was actually created by general law, activated by the Board of County Commissioners by resolution. The statute is clear that Tallahassee created an IDA in every single county in the state of Florida. It was up to each individual county commission to determine if a need existed upon the petition of 25 citizens or something, if I recall the number correctly. And if the Board of County Commissioners adopt a resolution declaring the need for an IDA, then it's activated. But the legislation actually says that it created one in every single county of the state, waiting activation by each individual county commission.
Okay, but as the Board of County Commissioners, then, I ask this and I'll quit. Who do we err on the side of? Do we take the Audit General for the Legislative Audit Committee and then direction to this board, or do we err on the side that you don't believe, and I'm being real direct here, but this is very important. We're looking like, on my end, we're splitting frog hairs. And in my day, we always erred on the side of the state. So that's what I'm ask you what you think our role is compared to what they have told us our role is.
Commissioner Johnson, I noticed in the letters that you're referring to from the Joint Legislative Auditing Committee that everywhere where the word Hardee County appeared, it was in a different font and in a different boldness and in a different kind of typeface. What that meant to me was we got a form letter that was sent to 300 or 400 special districts and the county commissions that in which each of those districts was located. Struggling for the right choice of words. We got a form letter where they did a search and replace and they plugged in each county as they generated the letter, and every Board of County Commissioner got the same thing. And the majority of those special districts, if not all of them, were most likely created by the Board of County Commissioners that got the letter. And then 189 is clear. There are a different set of standards applied to special districts that are created by the Board of County Commissioners because it's done by ordinance. So when the Board of County Commissioners creates a special district, like we had a mosquito problem and you created a mosquito control district for a certain area of the county, you would do that by ordinance. And then the ordinance itself would define what the county commission's roles and responsibilities are with respect to appointment of the members of the district, removal, what the standards for removal are, what the financial disclosure reporting requirements are, if any. It just goes on, the things that you would include in the ordinance. So when you look at a special district created by the Board of County Commissioners, the role of the county commissioners is completely different than that of one created by the legislature under Chapter 159.
And I'll close at this. Yeah, I've spent quite a bit of time up there and around involved in this issue. And as far as I'm concerned, I have been told point blank, we will ultimately, because of that creation, be held accountable. I just wanted your input and thought on it, and I appreciate your time.
Sure. Commissioner Johnson, I want to add one thing. I believe 189 does give you, depending on how it's interpreted, but I really don't have a problem, whatever the BOCC wants to. I don't think there's a person on this board, and certainly me as director, we welcome any and all input, oversight from the BOCC. I said in the meeting the other day, we are not here to be averse to any of the philosophy of the BOCC. We have to work together. But when I look at the intention of oversight relative to her letters in 189, it appears to me that that oversight would be, if it's applicable in this instance, to make sure that the annual financial reports and the audits are performed. And, you know, we certainly, I believe, are on the right path to having that situation totally rectified. And I don't know what else to say there.
And I'm agreeing with you. I just want to try to get some clarity here because that's a pretty big stick just north of us at their swing. It's a little bit bigger than our stick, and I've spent quite a bit of time involved in this for that very reason. Because I don't want none of us. I don't want to see nobody in any difficulty or any trouble by no means. That's the reason I've spent quite a bit of time with that, and I want to make sure at this level, right here today, on that particular issue. And also this thing clearing up the fact that a lot of people don't understand the mosaic thing as far as the county absolutely had to be the one. The agreement is between the board and mosaic. So therefore, never mind the expenditure, how they want to do it. That was the board had to sign off on it.
I want to go back though, and then I'll hush. But you know, when Ken made his statement, the Economic Development Terms Agreement or Economic Terms Agreement that is Exhibit B in the Mosaic Agreement did not have to be in that agreement. It could have been a separate agreement, but then there would not really have been enforceability. It is the enforceability aspect, and Ken touched on that, is the reason we inserted it there. It helped to chronicle it and to keep it recorded and on task, and that you have to take that into consideration too.
Thank you very much. We got a groundbreaking to do. Come on, we got to get this thing stopped. Yes, sir.
As a public citizen, first time as rapid citizen, this time as public citizen, big discussion on what we're talking about reading in 189. Commissioner Johnson, could you just read what you're reading in 189 so we all know what you're talking about?
It's fine. It's fine.
This is something past what we're doing here, but thank you, Doug. We got to move on. We've got a groundbreaking to do here, and I do want to thank everybody for coming and for their input here. Any other comments before we adjourn?
I would make one comment.
Yes.
And it's not relevant to the findings. When we have the formal responses prepared, we will copy each of you with it, so you have it. But I would admonish you, don't reply or anything. I don't send emails out to you guys as a body because I don't want anybody to reply to all and create issues. So we will send that out when it's prepared. And it's my duty to also tell you that recently we did have a lawsuit filed against the IDA for public records by Mr. Kuhlman, public records requests, and I'll be responding to that and taking care of that. But it's important for you to know that.
All right. With that, we'll stand adjourned. We have wait.
First, where we going first? Get directions.
Yes.
You want the sure thing first?
I think that's what I'm going to tell you.
On a more positive note, we have a lot of exciting things taking place. And so first we're going to the groundbreaking ceremony where PFM will be located. So we're glad they were able to join us today. And that is
just down the road.
Just down the road. I don't know my
Where all the
directions.
equipment is.
Okay, and following that, we will have a ribbon cutting ceremony for the sheriff's substation where there will be refreshments, so stick around for both.
Okay, head south. Quick. South. Walking photo op. You probably need to drive.
You right back about something.